Hi, everyone. Unfortunately, we had another technical difficulty on this podcast. Caison's receiver on his lapel mic ran out of batteries about halfway through this. We split this episode into two again. It was a really long recording, about 4 hours. So the first part of this, about halfway through it, Caison's mic will go out and the audio quality will change. Up until this point, I've been able to get away without having to actively monitor our mics while recording the podcast. It can be a little bit distracting. This is why it's nice to have somebody behind the camera monitoring stuff, but we're not there yet. In any case, I always replace the receiver on my mic and his mic at the same time, so I don't know why his went out so much earlier than mine did. But in any case, it happened. From now on, I'll be wearing headphones while we're recording, and I'll be monitoring our mics live while we record the podcast. So it won't happen again. And apologize for that dip in quality about halfway through this episode, but the following episode will not have that problem. So thanks for your patience, everyone. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name's Cain.
We're here to talk about Xenogears. But before we do that, Cain had a birthday.
I did.
Yesterday.
Just one day ago.
How was it? Was it good?
It was a decent birthday. I've had better.
Is it? You've had more beastly birthdays than
I've
this?
had more beastly. No, my granddad came up from Mississippi. And
Yeah.
that was fun. He and I shared the same birthday, actually.
Oh, you have the same one?
Yeah, me and my granddad.
Because my brother has the same one, too.
Yes, and
Sweet.
I actually know a ton of people who have
With October 6th?
Specifically that birthday, yeah. The guy I
Nice.
just hired at where I work at, he's October 11th.
Nice.
Pretty close.
Nice.
And then, crazy thing, my grandfather's grandfather was also born on October 6th. So there's a weird kind of
We need to do an investigation.
synchronicity. We also all have the same middle name.
How many people who watch this podcast were born on October 6th?
Please, yes, raise your hand. Type 6 in the comments if you were born on October 6th.
Just the number 6.
Just the number 6.
If you were born on October 6th. We'll
It's
see
a
how
good
many
though. I
people.
appreciate it.
Yep. Everybody, wish Cason a happy birthday.
Yeah.
Also, a reminder, I don't bring this up a lot. I don't like to do it, but it is the truth. This podcast is financed on Patreon and Subscribestar.
Of course.
We are on a weekly schedule because we went past a goal that we had set up. Each month, this is it's something you expect. Each month, it'll drop off a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to continue having the show be a weekly show, and you appreciate what we're doing, and you like it, and you're a fan, and you watch every week, hit us up. Please take a look at our Patreon and Subscribestar pages. We appreciate the support. All right, now it's time to jump in.
Okay.
So we left off right after getting into Solaris.
Yeah.
The first save point, which is where Faye gets into a little
The honeybee,
pod on
or
accident.
honeybee. What do you call that?
It's like a
beehive.
It's like a comb, a honeycomb
Yeah, it's like a
shaped
6
thing.
hexagon.
He got inside of it because he wasn't being careful, and it took off
Yes.
inside, and he got separated from Citan and Elly.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh no, I don't know where I am. And that save point that was right inside of that little pod is where we saved and left off. So it's right as we enter Solaris.
Right in Solaris.
And we ended this play session at the end of Disc 1.
Yep.
So it covers kind of a lot. This will very likely be split into 2 episodes again, because while what occurs as far as playing the game probably could have been covered in 1 episode. There's almost an hour-long cutscene of dialogue and talking about all kinds of stuff
at the very end
that we're going to have to really focus on understanding, and that might have to be its own episode. So we'll see how it goes. But the first note that I took today was that the introduction to Solaris I thought was really excellent. You come into the third class, what they call F block. And this is where the third class citizens, which are the worker bees, they've used that terminology before. These people are the ones, they're the workforce of Solaris. They basically do all of the grunt labor.
They do everything.
And they're basically like slave labor.
Yeah.
Right? And so you come in, and the first thing you see is a guy who's had it, being like, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yes.
Come on, band together, we're sick of this. and the guy just gets picked up and like dropped out the bottom of like what looks like a bottomless pit, but would just, I guess, drop him down to the surface, which would be, I mean, quite a fall. I mean, you're not surviving that.
Although, based on what we learned a little bit later, it's surprising that they didn't take him to a different place.
Yeah, for other
either
purposes.
way, this was more powerful, because if they just took someone away, it's like, well, who knows where they put him? Who knows what they did? Oh, he needs to be re-educated, and then he'll come back after he's been more brainwashed or something.
It's like, nope, this dude's...
Instead, it's like, no, these people are a dime a dozen. They have no value, and we can kill them immediately. And I didn't even think about the later stuff until you brought that up, where I'm like, oh, they shouldn't have, technically they shouldn't have done that. They should have put him somewhere else.
Yeah.
But it was effective for the intro for the show.
Yeah, for just like first coming in and being like, okay, this is what we're dealing with here. But then there is a guy who gets what they call rearranged, right? You go into his pod and he's like all worried about it. He's like, oh man, like what's going to happen? I hope they don't rearrange me, or I think I'm going to get rearranged or something like that. And as soon as you come out of the pod, you see it just gets taken out and just like taken somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh my gosh, like what are they doing to these people? And then you meet up with a guy named Samson, who Faye is shocked because he looks just like his old pal Timothy.
Timothy, from, that's my first one here.
Yeah. He's like, Timothy? He's like, I'm not Timothy.
What are you talking about? I'm not Timothy. No, I don't know if it is Timothy, but he's been brainwashed, or...
No, I think Timothy is dead for sure. I think
really
he has
a different person?
It's a different person. But I think that he has a similar face and like hairstyle, but the color of his hair is a little different, and anyways. So there's some subtle differences, but he just looks
Timothy's
like him.
brother who was kidnapped previously.
Who knows? But what I really like about it is he sets up like, all right, I've been like planning this escape from the third class level for a while. Here's what I'm going to do. If
you're just the guy. Yeah, we just showed up, and he's like, boom.
I've got like the fake IDs. I'm like all set to go.
He's set. He's not as set as he thought he was, but he's pretty set.
And that's what I really liked about it was he speaks so confidently about it. He's like, all right, if you're in, like come follow me. Yeah. And you go talk to Elly first, which I'll talk about in a second. But then you go with Samson, and he tries to cross the little, I don't know what they call it. It's like a terminal that checks your IDs.
Yeah, it would be the equivalent of a metal detector, but instead of just beeping,
it does like a genetic scan. Yeah. Or something like that.
But there's a huge flaw in it, in that if there are two people, it doesn't notice.
Yeah. Which was funny.
Very big. I wonder what's the limit to that defect? It could be that one, as long as one of them's a Solarian, you could have like 12 people
It's a pretty ridiculous and silly defect and inconvenience to let them get in. But I like
it's showing the separation. It's genetic. Like there's nothing you can do. Your genes aren't good enough.
Yeah.
And some people get promoted, that's fine, but for the most part, it's like you are here, you're not allowed here, and it has nothing to do with your work. It's all because you have DNA that says a thing, and we don't like that thing, so you can't come over.
Yeah. And then he steps on it, and he's just like, it's just like really intense.
Yes.
And a really good way of setting up.
Well, I didn't expect that.
The cruelty, the brutality,
yes, absolutely.
Oppression.
I figured he kind of was competent and knew what he was doing, and at the same time, these worker bee people, they don't have much to lose, I guess, which is why that other guy was like, hey, let's fight back, like what do we got to lose? And he gets killed, but it's like whatever, that's about as good as what he was doing anyways. But what I found just amazing was after watching that, Elly's like, well, let's go on too.
Yep.
And Faye's like, wait, why would we do this? And she's like, I don't know. If it doesn't work, we'll think of something. And I think Faye's response was, that's something Bart would say.
Yeah.
and Elly's like, yeah, I guess so. And she just walks right on it. And I was kind of amazed at that.
Yeah, she was being almost self-sacrificing again, which is part of her enneagram. Like, I'll try it because I'm the only one who would be... If I'm still in the system, which I doubt because I'm a traitor at this point, I'd be really surprised if I was still allowed to do this. But if anyone can get through, it's going to be me. And so she steps on, and it recognizes her as a first-class citizen. So it's like, go ahead. But she's like, she expresses like, that is weird. Like, how do they still have me in here? Like, what's going on with that? And Faye tries to suggest, I guess like Gebler didn't report it. or something like that.
Oh, because they didn't want to look bad. Ramses that looks horrible already. He doesn't want to look worse by saying, "Oh,
but
this
like
Elly, who you gave me, she turned on me," and all this.
I'm trying to remember how aware he would be. I guess he would, because he fought us, and Elly was on our side.
Yeah, well, he may not be, but Dominia certainly was, and Dominia's right there with.
But Miang was trying to hide it from Ramses earlier.
Oh, you're right. I wonder how successful she was.
But I don't think so, because there was a point after that, I believe, where Elly came back, right, and she like sabotaged the Yggdrasil's engine. Yeah. And then after that scene, we fought Ramses, and Elly was with us at that point. So Ramses should know.
For sure.
By then. However, I think you're right that he doesn't want to look worse than he already looks.
Right, and Miang, so you have the two people who lead Gebler. It's Ramses, but also, Miang's like part of it too. And neither of them they're both incentivized to not tell anyone.
Yeah.
Miang has her own reasons for wanting to do whatever she's doing with Elly, and then Ramses just really doesn't want to look bad.
Yeah.
So that's a plausible enough explanation, but playing the game, like that's not the real explanation.
Yeah.
Like it's good enough for them to say, let's just keep going, it's probably fine, but as a player, it's a good hint that something
more is going on.
Yeah, because it's one thing when something's too easy, it's like, oh, that was too easy, but it's a game and whatever. Yeah. It's another thing when it's too easy and then the character calls out, hey, that was too easy. Now that like your red lights in your brain should flash and go, yeah, it was too easy, and also they said it's too easy, so that's important, right?
Right.
It becomes very important later.
But yeah, like you were saying, the fact that the fault or the weakness of this system is that someone who is not a citizen can just step on with someone who is. I guess you could explain that away by saying like a first-class citizen might have the right to bring somebody from third class with them. So it's like you can go with someone if they bring you in, but there's not enough really explanation as to how this security system works.
Yeah,
but it did feel a little silly that just, you can just step on with me and then it won't scan you and it'll be fine.
Okay.
But all right.
Yeah, that was fun.
So you make your way from there up to the top level, the higher, I think it's like more like the second class area, I would assume.
Yeah.
Into Entrenank, which is the capital of Solaris, the capital city.
My first note here is Solaris music sounds like a clown show.
It's carnival music.
But there's a there's a meeting. What would you call it? There's a conference, there's a thing happening.
There's like an announcement.
Yeah.
Like the emperor is going to speak to the people kind of a thing. You need like tickets to get in to like.
What this did for me specifically was just really highlight and enunciate, specifically point out the difference between where the third class people are allowed to go and then the first class. Like third class, they're working their butts off, they're being killed, they're just like, it's a mess, it sucks. You just step over one little green square barrier and it's literally a clown party where everyone's just like having a blast and everything's fine.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And the music helps to highlight that difference. I didn't love the music, I really didn't.
It's pretty grating after a while.
No, but as a narrative tool, it's good. It highlights the difference and it shows that like, something's weird. These people are literally partying all the time.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Well, and there's something kind of unnerving in it too. In the sense, and maybe even something that highlights sort of the blind, like willful blindness and naivety of the people living there as to how their system is supported and
Elly
exactly
says
what's
that
going on.
she didn't know and she didn't want to know.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's willful blindness, willful ignorance, and hey, things are good. Don't push
and I
the
do
system.
think
Don't
I
question.
do think the carnival music, in sort of this eerie way, kind of emphasizes that attitude.
Yeah, I think so.
Of just like living like that, and it makes you into a clown too.
I know, you're a clown going about as if everything's normal. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But
so I do think it works.
Yeah, thematically. It's good.
Now, there's one thing I wanted to bring up. I think I ended up saying this earlier in the playthrough. I was asking about Entrenank, which is when Citan and Sigurd were first telling us about Solaris, they mentioned the capital city, Entrenank. And I was like, that's got to be a reference to something that sounds like it is.
Well, I hear Ankh. The Ankh, that's Egyptian, right? So I'm thinking like, that sounds Egyptian to me.
Yeah. And so what people commented about was that it was an incorrect transliteration back into English from Japanese, which from Japanese they were trying to say.
You know what's
Which happens a lot in this.
The Japanese got it right, though.
Yes.
Because a lot of times I forgive it when it's like, oh, the Japanese, and trying to figure out what it is in English is difficult, right, based on how they're pronouncing it. If you Romanize the Japanese, you get the exact spelling of this word in English.
It should
so
be,
he changed it to something completely different.
Yeah, it should be Etemenanki.
Etemenanki.
Right,
yeah.
instead of Entrenank. So that's what it's referencing.
Yeah.
But this is a ziggurat dedicated to Marduk in the ancient city of Babylon.
Yeah, Marduk. And Marduk was the top god of the pantheon of Babylonian gods.
Yeah, so this is, again, another reference to Tower of Babel kind of stuff.
That seems, so this is like another Tower of Babel. So
yes.
Their last one broke, but they made a new one.
Well, you have
they just keep doing this over and over.
Because you saw that in the opening movie with the Eldridge ship, right? The ship itself was dabbling in things in terms of its technology, where it was trying to challenge God in a way, right? Which is
working that which
an archetype of the Tower of Babel.
Yes,
and
exactly.
it's like then it gets destroyed.
And it gets
by God because it challenged God. And Solaris in many ways is doing the same thing. The way that they are playing God in this world. And so Etemenanki or Entrenank, the capital city, is a reference to Tower of Babel again, where they are trying to dabble in things that they should not. Right?
And great is the fall thereof, once again. Once again. Also, I didn't realize this at the time, but after playing more of this game, I'm realizing that initial scene, that cutscene that plays at the very beginning of the game, the animated one, has parallels with, there's a reason I didn't make this parallel, but it seems to be a lot more similar to Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
And that ends up being a Tower of Babel, but began as an ark kind of thing. Because they talk about building an ark and stuff, the Gazelle do.
Yes.
And so I had missed that earlier, but that's because the whole thing breaks, and Noah's Ark didn't break. So, but it seems to me that that's what that may have been, and that's what they're trying to do again. They're trying to build an ark so that they can, and there's some good imagery there.
Yeah, there's a whole
your
lot.
ark can very easily turn into a Tower of Babel, depending on what you're doing. Are you hearkening to God, or are you like challenging God? Yeah,
exactly.
Then your ark may come crashing down.
Yeah, so anyways, all the stuff that we learn about what Solaris is doing in this section of the game really harken to that archetype of Tower of Babel. They in some ways, they've convinced themselves, or they believe that they are trying to be one with God, or that they're in league with God.
Yeah.
But what they're doing to people, like the experimentation, the levels of which they're doing that with the lambs, is certainly kind of flips the table on that. They're trying to play God in many ways.
Yeah.
So good stuff.
Well, and Emperor Cain being the first of, I guess Adam and Eve would have been the first to challenge God, but between Cain and Abel, Cain was the one who was in opposition to God, and he's the leader of it. Etemenanki. Anyways, it's pretty great.
So you have to get some tickets in order to get in to see this how do you call it, this speech that Cain is going to give, because the people are really unsettled right now.
Well, they know the gates were
destroyed. They know
destroyed.
the gate was damaged.
I don't know how they know that, if they're living in this blissful ignorance that's controlled media and all that stuff, but somehow the word gets out, and so they're all nervous.
So somebody else brought this up to me. When it first shows Solaris, there's like one of those FMV sequences where it's kind of like unfolding or whatever.
Like a flower?
And
I saw that earlier.
My assumption was that was sort of like a normal, I don't know, like a thing that Solaris does. This is sort of like opening up or unfolding or something like that. But he was under the assumption that happened because of the gate. And so like people would be aware. Like the gate is,
so there was
if Solaris is doing this, that means, our gate is jeopardized or something.
Okay, interesting.
So I don't know which the answer is.
Interesting.
But in either case, the people are aware.
The people know
that the gate has been jeopardized and that someone tried to get in, right? So they're all worried. And so this is what the announcement is going to be about, is to try to like keep people calm, like, not allow people to start panicking or whatever, and just sort of keep things under control. But you can either watch this from, I forget what the term they use is, like home vision or something. It's not home, but it's some kind of something
like home vision. It was like that. Yeah.
But anyways, their TV's at home.
Yeah.
Or you can get some tickets to actually be present.
To actually be there
at the speech. And so the guard tells you got to get tickets, and so you can kind of go around and explore. There's a woman who's had an injury or something.
Yeah, she's like, I can't go anymore.
Here you can have these tickets. Young kids like you should go see that. I'll just watch from home. But while I was, exploring around, and there's a couple things you can find. One, there's a Tifa poster on the wall. I don't know if you saw this.
No,
really? Tifa Lockhart, Final Fantasy VII character.
No way.
There's a poster of her like on the wall of somebody's little room as you're going around in there.
That's so funny. I totally missed that.
And I don't know if you knew this either. We talked about this, I think, on the week that you weren't here when your baby
early
was
on.
born.
Oh, okay.
We talked about how in Final Fantasy VII there's a reference to Xenogears in that. So they're kind of having cross-referential little things in them, right? So that's kind of cool. But also Big Joe is there. He's just kind of dancing around, spinning in circles or whatever. He's in some kind of dance course or something.
Funny.
He was kind of showing up, and it really makes you wonder, like, how on earth did you get here? How are you able to get to all these places?
All these places that we're having a hard time.
It's just a funny little reference thing, but
it is. There's also, you go to the stores and there's these kids that are trying to buy this certain kind of shoe, this like special model shoe. I can't remember what they called it, and they're sold out, and the kids are all upset about it. It's pretty funny. But
like the pogo shoes.
Yeah, the pogo shoes.
Mm-hmm. And then there's an NPC who talks about how memory cubes, the save points, right? How they send data to central control. So they're aware in Solaris that when they use that, like, they're being surveilled.
Yeah, but they can't not use it, I guess.
Yeah.
There's some 1984 kind of stuff going on here. I also noticed some Fahrenheit 451. If you guys have read that book, that's the book burning thing, right, from however long ago. The idea of homovision, which is from Fahrenheit 451, where their entire wall was a TV.
Yep.
And then you get 2, 3, 4 walls, and there's this one woman in Fahrenheit 451 how she has 3 wall TVs, and she's so excited to get her 4th, because then it'll be complete immersion, it'll be like a perfect experience. But they're talking about homovision. It gave me that kind of idea. Also just the general surveillance of everything, you're always being watched, and also the separation between the crappy life of the people doing the work and then everybody else. Yeah, so there's a lot of 1984 and Fahrenheit 451. I didn't get much Brave New World from this, although that would be another big dystopian book back in the day. I didn't get as much of that because that's more centered around like drugs and everyone's being happy. It could still be there. And then Soylent Green, of course.
Yes.
It's like, I feel like they read all 4 of those books and they were like, okay, let's make a thing that's like all of that, like explicitly, like very clearly all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, the Soylent Green reference is very on the nose, but we'll get to that in a second. So anyways, you end up getting the tickets, and you get in during the Emperor's speech.
Yeah.
And it was kind of cool how they have Elly more or less like translating for Faye.
Yes, and as soon as she's gone, we're like, we have no idea what anyone's saying
anymore, right?
Yeah, that's
pretty
cool.
They're speaking Solarian here.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much in the weeds I want to get into this. It was just a thought that I had because I've been saying this for many, many podcasts now, but I'm almost done with it. I've been reading the book of Shogun.
Oh, of course.
In Shogun, they do something really clever with making everything be in English, right? But like differentiating between different languages.
Okay, yeah.
So like Blackthorn, the main character, he can speak Portuguese and Latin and all these different languages, right? Or English, and he's learning Japanese as he's there. So when he's talking to other people in Portuguese, it's pretty like standard English. But when he starts speaking in Latin, to those who understand Latin, when he doesn't want someone who might know Portuguese to know what he's saying, it goes into the kind of that early modern English mode, the these and the thous.
Yeah,
and
the ancient Latin.
And so like he'll just like seamlessly, the author will just seamlessly go from thee, thou, thine into like regular English again, and he's switching to Portuguese or he's switching to Latin now, right? And it's pretty like clever,
That's cool.
I felt, way of doing that. And it would be nice if maybe there was some way that they could do something kind of like that, where like you could differentiate or know, like, okay, they're speaking Solarian here, but like we need to understand what they're saying.
Yeah, because I didn't get that for a while.
It wasn't until Elly, I think she does mention, do you want me to translate for you?
I'll translate for you, yeah.
Right.
But then you just...
It isn't until Faye is alone that you like, oh, okay, like,
yeah,
they're speaking Solarian.
That you realize that you don't know what anyone's saying, and that's interesting.
Yeah, but it's
Samson definitely spoke our language.
Yeah, as you're going around, that's true actually, because those are lambs, I would guess, who have been abducted, and Faye would be able to talk to them. But I don't know. It would have been nice to like have like a stronger moment of like, oh, Faye can't understand. It's okay. Like, don't talk.
Yeah,
I'll make sure.
That way, he needs to rely on her because you don't get that. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, like,
you're right.
They're trying to hide the fact that he's a lamb, so he wouldn't be talking, and she wouldn't be like translating so that people would know how to translate. It's just that she's with us and she understands what people are saying. He would not.
Yeah.
And it isn't until they get to this speech where she like says, "Okay, I'll translate." Like,
that should have come
live
right earlier
for you. Yeah, right. Anyways, but it's still pretty cool that detail is there, because earlier in the game, it wasn't since like way back in the forest that we've really had characters speaking in this language.
Where's Citan? Oh, you're right, because she said like stop or something with the gun.
Yeah.
But other than that, she started speaking.
I would assume that characters like Ramses and Miang, when they're speaking to each other, would be using Solarian.
Yeah.
Or when Graf is talking to, or like the Gazelle Ministry is talking to Krelian. They're probably doing that. But it's been so long since we've had like a person speaking Solarian directly that it kind of just melds together. And so as I was reading Shogun, I was like, it'd be interesting if they had some way to, just a different way of writing the English so that it delineated between, okay, they're speaking Solarian here and they're speaking Lamb here, right? But whatever. It's not that big of a deal. Just something I thought about. But the speech itself is really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So it starts off with Emperor Cain. Now, I can't remember when this came up. I'll probably have to make an addendum to this or go back and show the footage from earlier in the game, where the Gazelle Ministry mentions something about using a double for Cain, right? So when Cain appears in front of people, that's not the real Emperor Cain. They have like a body double person who they use to project their message, the Gazelle's message to the people. And I assume that that's what's happening here. So when Cain comes up and he gives his speech and, like saying all these things, kind of the propaganda-like speech that he gives there, that's not the legitimate Emperor Cain, who we know is having at least a little bit of resistance to the Gazelle. They have some rifts between them.
And who Citan can talk to.
Yeah.
Maybe telepathically, just at certain times.
So this person talking in the costume of the Emperor is not the actual Emperor. And it's nice that the Emperor always comes with the mask on, because now they can hide that fact, right? But in any case, he's just a puppet. The caricature of Emperor Cain in Solaris is just something that the Gazelle uses to spread their propaganda message. But it's Krelian who ends up coming up kind of in the middle of it, who gets to the important
and
stuff.
He gives the actual
the real speech, right?
Yeah.
And it's really cool scene here, where Faye has a flashback. He recognizes Krelian when he sees him almost.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time we've seen him though, right?
It was the first time that Faye has seen him.
Oh, because Faye's sometimes passed out, and Elly and others. Okay.
And he's been in his little fishbowl ship flying around doing stuff, out. But he hasn't confronted us yet. This is the first time our party in the game would have. Now Elly would recognize who Krelian is because she lives there, but Faye is seeing him for what he supposes is the first time, but he feels like he knows him, like he's familiar. And they flash back to Nisan. And
this was the biggest, most in-depth memory of Faye's that we've seen so far. Usually it's just images and little snippets here and there. This was almost a full narrative.
Yeah, so Krelian at that time has blue hair, and he's got, so his hair is grayed in the modern age, I think is what that's supposed to be signifying. He's lived a long time.
Yeah.
Not aged, 500 years, but aged somewhat, right? And so, like, he had blue hair at that time, and a character who looks exactly like Faye, is dressed exactly like Faye, but is named Lacan.
Lacan, yeah.
Comes walking in. Now, the other time that we've heard that name was all the way back the first time we visited Nisan.
Yeah, yeah.
And he has the flashback of painting Sophia, and Sophia called him Lacan in that flashback.
Yes.
So this character is Lacan in the time of Sophia, 500 years ago, when, as we learned in Shavat, Krelian was allied with Nisan and with Ave against Solaris and Shavat. So Krelian comes to Nisan in the scene, and Lacan is there with him. And there's, you can kind of see that they are friends. You know, they know each other, and they're talking to each other. Sets up a really good mystery here as to, like, how did Krelian go from a surface dweller in Nisan who opposes Solaris to being effectively the leader of Solaris now? Like, what happened there? Right?
Yeah, I don't know that we get that answer in this play session, but yeah, that is like the biggest question.
But it's like, holy crap, what happened to Krelian? And then they had a few breadcrumbs of that in Shavat earlier, but this is the first time where, if you're not talking to optional characters and NPCs and things like that, that really lays it on you. But one other thing I want to mention, and this is not something we're going to have time to get into today at all, but Lacan, the name Lacan,
Jacques Lacan,
is a reference to the French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan,
who I mentioned a couple episodes ago. He's the one who came up with the mirror stage of film watching.
And he just like Carl Jung and Freud and other psychoanalysts that they've referenced in the game, like, what, you know, the things he talked about in his lectures and things like that, some of those things are going to be very important to understanding a particular part of the plot of Xenogears. That being said, that particular part I'm talking about, where you need to know Jacques Lacan in order to understand what happened here, is not happening today.
Okay.
So they're saving that for later, because that's going to be a whole big thing. But just be aware that it's not like necessarily a bad idea to familiarize yourself a little bit with, you know, what Lacan taught, what he thought. It will help you to sort of like understand what's going on in a specific part that's coming up.
Well, he was a smart guy, but I do have to say I'm not a huge fan of, in this game, when certain names are used that are references to older figures, but are not relevant to the older figure, but like sometimes they are. like 3 times they are, but all the other times they're not.
They're just references, but they're not like actually integral to anything.
Exactly. So now I'm thinking, okay, Cain might actually parallel Cain from the Bible now. Okay, interesting stuff. But they also put up this Mahanan in his speech. When Cain is talking, he talks about Mahanan, which is God or paradise or something. I don't know exactly what he's referring to when he says Mahanan.
We'll get into that, because,
Well, but I do know that Cain is dubbed the Master Mahan in Genesis. They call him Master Mahan. And Mahan means, it's an Egyptian word, ancient Egyptian, but it means snake, or it means coil. But Mahan was the snake god, right, of ancient Egypt. And referencing, pairing Cain with the idea of a snake is where the word Mahan comes from. But anyways, that's another biblical thing. So I'm pretty sure that Cain is going to follow some biblical things, but I'm going to have to wait and find out. But it's interesting. It's good to know when they do actually parallel things. So, Lacan,
so Lacan is actually going to be an important reference, and we'll get to that later. But anyways.
Lacan and Erich Fromm were actually similar in some other ideas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and Erich Fromm, by the way.
E-R-I-C-H.
That's Elly's father's name is Erich.
Yes, Erich. And there's 2 Erichs with that CH. One of them is Erich Neumann, who wrote The Origins of Consciousness or Origins and History of Consciousness, which was great. He's Jungian. Yeah. But Erich Fromm was similar to Lacan, was a little more Hegelian, a little more Freudian.
So could be either one of them.
Could be either one.
Anyways, the important thing that we learned from the speech from Krelian is that they have captured the other party members. So they have Bart, and they have Maria, and they have Billy, and all of them, right? They have them captured. And so Faye starts freaking out. And he's like, oh, he's not being aware of himself. He's not...
Yes, but previously he had looked at Elly and said, hey, Elly, are you okay? And she's like, oh, yeah, I'm fine, nothing. Like, we're good. But that's weird because she was supposed to be translating.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever. And then we start freaking out. That makes me think she was having her own flashback for a moment there.
Maybe.
And maybe that's the reason we even noticed was she stopped translating. We're like, what's your deal?
Yeah.
So then we start having a flashback, and I think there's probably a connection between us and Elly there.
Yeah. But he starts to forget himself. He starts shouting a little bit. Obviously, he would not be shouting in Solarian. He'd be shouting in lamb language.
Oh my gosh.
So,
as if the fact that Elly's sitting there translating to him in the back of everybody who should understand this isn't enough of a giveaway that he starts shouting. There's one other thing, though. There's a person within Krelian's past and phase, well, Lacan's past. Lacan's present, well, at the time. Anyways, is named Melchior, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And that Melchior was Krelian's like mentor, yeah. And Melchior is
the third
Hebrew.
Wiseman.
It's a comment, yes, but it's a combination of Melech means king and means light. So Melchior is Melchior, the king of light. And that they purposely don't show his face, but he's got those powers, that mystique kind of thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was wondering, I think in one of the other episodes I was like, I don't remember because we were trying to account for all the wise men in the game, Melchior, Gaspar, and Balthazar. And we were like, is Wiseman a Wiseman? It's like the name would suggest that, and are there more than 3 Wisemen? And I was like, I could not remember where Melchior appears in the game, but here it is. Melchior was
the teacher
Krelian's, mentor, teacher.
So presumably
sensei.
taught Krelian a lot of things, possibly including what Krelian starts doing later on.
Yes. So there you go. Then Faye forgets himself, like I was saying. He starts shouting. He's drawing attention to himself. Now, I'm gonna say this. My first.
Oh, dude, I'm sorry.
Did you have something else?
I got more notes, man. I got more notes before we leave on because this dream, I put a lot there. He at the very last words of the dream, as he's talking to Melchior, and Lacan is present, he says, "So even Mother Sophia could ... And it's something about this new technology that's going to help people, and it's the thing that Emeralda was made in.
Yes,
right?
the nanotechnology.
Krelian made that, it seems, and that this was going to help people. It could even help Sophia." Is what he says. This could even Sophia ... And I looked up the Japanese, same kind of thing. It's just as for Sophia ... And that's it. But my note here is that Mother Sophia could theoretically live on forever. Is I believe what the implication of that was, because they're talking about how the machine can help.
Okay, so really good catch.
All that kind of stuff.
What I'm about to say is not a spoiler because we encounter this later in this exact play session.
Okay.
Where it's just we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, so I'm just going to say this now, and then we'll maybe elaborate on it in a minute. Krelian is like a molecular biologist. Well, nanotechnology is his.
Is that biology or is that? Yeah.
It's
that's funny.
Anyways, he genetic engineering might not be his focus. That's what's happening in Solaris, but he is specifically into nanotechnology. Is what he does.
the nanomachines. Yeah.
So this would have been true of him 500 years ago as well. Mm-hmm. So that's what's being referenced in the scene, like you're saying. Yes.
Yeah.
But as he elaborates on in the scene with Elly later on here, he hadn't figured out how to get nanomachines
to
complex
be at the atomic
and
level.
small enough to actually carry out what he wants to do.
Right.
That's why he had to go to the Zebawim era's nanotechnology to fill in the gaps of his own knowledge. So whatever he was working on there at the 500 years ago relating to Sophia, he obviously wasn't successful at. He could not figure out how to get the right nanomachine technology.
So the one he made is not the one that we see
Right, because
Zebulun later on. That makes
because
sense.
he says straight up, like, it wasn't until I got Esmeralda that I was able to actually
figure that out.
Get this to work correctly.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, yeah, he was working on something 500 years ago.
And he could see the potential of it.
Yeah, but couldn't complete it.
But wasn't able to do it.
It wasn't until the Zebulun era technology filled in the gaps that he could actually get where he wants to get with it.
Can you imagine working on the same thing for 500 years?
And not...
yeah, and like failing and
finishing
failing and failing
and
failing.
not being able to figure it out.
Jeez.
It's basically what happened with Krelian. Okay, we good?
Yeah.
Okay, so Faye forgets himself. He draws attention to him, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And okay, so what I was going to say.
There's a good Japanese part here because he's getting upset. Well, you say your thing first because that might be before.
So Faye, I guess what I was going to say is at the beginning of the podcast, episode 1 and 2, I talked about how my impression of Faye was that he was exceptionally stupid. And, maybe that interpretation is not quite right because a lot of that I was reading into the Aizuchi, asking questions and not being able to understand anyone. Another part of it...
Speaking thoughts out loud or something.
Another part of it was clarified to me in a lot of Citan's dialogue here right at the end of the disc. And it's not like I hadn't picked up on the fact that I don't want to get so far ahead of ourselves, but Faye's personality that we know as Faye in this part, the whole time the game so far, basically advented or emerged 3 years ago.
He's a 3-year-old.
So everything that Faye, this personality of Faye, knows or understands about social interaction or anything, basically came from his time in Lahan Village. So he's not like very adept socially in a lot of ways. And so that could explain some of his outbursts and like just not being like aware, like this is not how you should behave in this moment.
Right.
And Citan really hits it home with some dialogue I copied down that we'll get to later.
Well, good.
But this was one of the examples in my first playthrough. I was just like, Faye is so dumb.
Yes.
I cannot understand why.
And
you
I
do
think
this.
I know where you're going, where that's going to go. And I think that's correct. You're kind of supposed to think that he's pretty stupid.
Yes.
Because they have a good reason for why he acts that way.
He brings like the sentries, like the robots that sort of go around, surveilling the place, and some other military guys.
He
brings them
catches
over
their
to
attention.
Him. They have to run.
Yeah.
And they go through some tunnels under the surface where they're at, and they kind of come up next to Elly's house.
I've got things about that argument though, because it's a weird argument. It's very strange because he's just shouting. It does remind me, like I have a kid who's 2, and it's like if you run in the street, a car will kill you.
Yes. And
he can't help it. He can't not run in the street.
Understand.
He will run in the street. And I'm not like Faye isn't really a 3-year-old. He's obviously a mature,
Yeah, he's a teenager.
Person,
18-year-old or something.
With a brain that's, anatomically correct, maybe not functionally perfect, but, it's designed biologically to be a brain. And, but still having only 3 years of his conscious kind of learning things. You know? And you still have to go through certain stages, even if you're older. If you like people who wake up from seizures or something, like they are not just seizures. What's the word?
Comas.
A coma. People who wake up from a coma will often have to relearn basic stuff, and they will act younger. They will act immature and things. Until they get things figured out. So I see a lot of that going on here. But he says something in Japanese, which is, "You're being a snot." To her. Or that's because she's like, "Why are you yelling?" He's like, "It's because you're being a snot." Or no, because she asks her, "What's the plan?" And she's like, "Well, I don't know." He's like, "You don't have a plan? Like you're being a snot." I don't know.
Something like that. Yeah,
I don't even remember it because it didn't make sense in my mind. So my mind can't make those connections. They don't work in English. So in Japanese, he does not call her a snot. I just wanted to throw this out there. He doesn't say that. He says something more along the lines of, "This is why I'm being loud. It's because you don't have a plan and our friends are going to die and this is a horrible situation.
Yeah.
That's why I'm yelling." That's what he's saying. This is why I'm making such a big deal about it. But in English, it was chosen to translate the line of, "This is why my voice is being so big." They translated it as, you're such a snot, Elly."
Yeah, that's weird.
I don't know why.
And it makes him sound, it's these kind of combination of things that make him sound really stupid. Yeah. But of course, he's just very concerned about Bart and the others.
Yes.
It's like they're gonna die. Who knows when this is going to happen? They said it's going to be tomorrow or something, but like, how do we know that?
Yeah, it could be like right now.
What are we going to do?
Yeah.
Like, tell me what we're going to do. You're the one leading here. I don't know. He's like, what do you mean you don't know? He's just really scared.
Yes.
And so when he gets into really emotionally compromised places, that's when he doesn't know how to handle himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the point Citan makes later. And he asks Elly about this.
Yeah, like, if you notice, Elly's like, I've noticed.
I have noticed that he has these outbursts
of rage.
So and this is true of children, right?
Yep.
They don't know how to handle their emotions. They outburst. This I feel frustrated. Shouting, and they haven't learned how to deal with that. And so
they haven't integrated their complete self yet.
Faye, like you said, anatomically has the brain of an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
But he has the experience, maybe, of a 3-year-old in terms of dealing with strong emotion.
Emotion specifically, yeah.
And this causes him to outburst because he can't control it, not necessarily because he is stupid, but because he doesn't have the experience to know how to handle really high emotions. And on top of that, when he gets mentally exhausted, id takes over. And so he has another personality fighting for control.
Yeah.
And especially anything that induces rage or anger is going to really be like a fight there. Right. And so there's all this stuff going on inside that makes it hard for him to control his emotions.
Right, because he can just, as they say later, he can just disassociate and not deal with the emotions properly. Yes. And that's when it shows up.
Exactly. So they run away because he draws all that attention to them, and they emerge up right next to Elly's house. Yeah. And he's like, oh my gosh, this is your house? Like, holy crap. So they go inside. And this is again where I get a little, I wish there was a way to delineate between when they're speaking Solarian and when they're not.
With the family?
Because it's just hard because Elly's mother, Medina, I think is her name, right?
Yeah, Medina, yeah.
She comes and greets you. And Elly is obviously trying to hide the fact that this is a lamb walking around with me, right? She tries to make up a story about who he is. But she would not be, again, like translating in real time what her mother's saying, because that would give away the fact that this is a lamb. So
how do we know anything they're saying? Yeah.
Right. Okay, so one thing I'm noticing now while editing the footage here in post is that the story that Elly makes up is that Faye is being promoted from third-class citizen. Like, this is a recent thing that had happened. So there is some plausibility here that Medina, upon realizing that, right, would understand he was a lamb in the third-class block down below who's being, elevated up now and maybe has not learned to speak Solarian yet, and maybe switches her speech into lamb mid-discussion. But we will continue to sort of go back and forth on, does Medina speak lamb regularly or not in the home? We'll get into that more, but I just noticed as I was editing the footage that Elly does mention that he was a third-class citizen. He's being promoted, and so maybe then Medina would recognize that and switch into Solarian, and then, Faye would be able to understand what she's saying. Anyways, just something I wanted to add into this. So Medina asks Faye a question directly, and I forgot to copy down what it is. But he doesn't know how to respond.
He actually says no. She asks to confirm what Elly's doing.
And he says no.
No.
And this is why I'm a little confused, because it's like he wouldn't even understand the question if it was Solarian.
Yeah. At
all. If Medina is not speaking Solarian, she's speaking lamb, I also question why. It does. That just seems weird to me. I don't know why. Now, we do know that Elly's father takes pity on lambs and took in some kind of
a maid.
Housekeeper or maid or something who was a lamb. We learn all about that in a minute. So obviously, the people in the household would be able to speak lamb. My question is, would they primarily do that in their own household unless they're talking to the maid? So is
I guess Medina would have to be speaking lamb.
She would have to. But in an intimate conversation between her and her daughter, where somebody else is listening, who she would assume is a soldier with Solaris.
Elly is telling that, right? Elly's telling them this person is like part of the special forces. I've brought him over to our house. It's weird to me that Medina would speak lamb to that person instead of Solarian. Or that when someone they don't know enters the house, who they assume is part of the Solarian society, would not be speaking Solarian to them. So anyways, this is a nitpicky thing, I admit. It's not that big of a deal. But it just kind of like adds to my confusion about when or not they're speaking Solarian.
Right.
And
well, that creates a dissonance in your mind that makes it difficult to immerse in the story.
Sure.
And that,
But the important part of this is that...
I will say I actually did not pick up on that.
I was, again, feeling like, Faye, why are you so dumb? She's like creating an explanation for you.
All you have to do is say yes.
He denies it. What are you doing?
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
She like creates the perfect like explanation for why he's here and who he is. And when Medina says, "Is that right?" He goes, "No." I mean,
no. And then they leave, and she doesn't question him any further.
Well, just say yes, man.
Yeah, it's pretty weird,
right?
I wonder if there's a reason for that. If there's like a superego reason, like don't tell a lie kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's like you're not allowed to do this.
So then they go into her room, which has a shower in the middle of it. It's actually kind of funny. The technology of it I actually find pretty cool. Like, that'd be dope to have like a shower like that with almost like display walls or whatever.
Yes, but I thought when she gets in there, it all turns white, right?
Yeah, it's a steam.
I thought it was that there was a technology that made it white so nobody could see, because there is such a thing nowadays where you can make glass that will become opaque in a moment. But I guess it was just steam. That's literally just a glass thingy.
Yeah.
And
so she's just in there.
And she don't make a big deal about it. Well, that could be a connection with whatever you call it, Brave New World, where that's just not a big deal in the post-morality future where everything is just okay, and that she's like whatevs, and then when Faye takes a shower, he's just like, "Don't look at me!" He's like covering, facing away, and
stressed out about it.
She thinks it's so cute.
But this was another thing that contributed to my feelings about Faye. And this could be interpreted as he's just feeling awkward and embarrassed because she's showering right next to him. Because he turns away and he's like, "Oh, so was that your mom?"
Yeah, she's pretty. Yeah, that was
It's
funny.
just like, of course, that's... Now, again, I don't know whether or not he understood what she was saying, because if she's speaking Solarian, then maybe he could be confused about who that was.
His answer would make sense when he goes, his answer makes sense if he didn't understand the question. Yeah. Which may be that. That wasn't obvious.
If he didn't understand the conversation happening between Elly and her mother, that would be, oh, who was that person? Was that your mom? But if he does understand it, and they're all speaking lamb, he looks really dumb. Having just talked with her mother, she addressed her as, "Hi, Mother," the first thing she says when she walks in.
That makes me think that he didn't understand it. So he didn't know what she was saying. But they didn't do a great job of that within that scene immediately. But I guess they're trying to make up for it afterwards. Like, he didn't know what they were saying. And they are trying to hammer home the idea that Elly considers this to be her mother, despite the knowledge,
the rumor
that is not technically her real mother.
Yeah.
But she won't. If you ask her, she'll say, "Yeah, that's my mom." And
I have a lot of questions on this too, because
I know, me too. Is it the maid? Is that it?
Well,
because that wouldn't fly in my house. My wife, I'd be like, "Oh, let's bring her into our house now," knowing the whole story.
We gotta into this, but. Anyways, she makes him shower too. They're gross. Whatever. They've been fighting and running and sweating and like who knows how long it's been.
And he makes the comment that he hasn't taken a bath since freaking Citan's bathtub.
Which seems weird.
I know, that's kind of awkward.
Well, I don't know if he says it's been since then, or if it was like, oh, this is just so much better than what I'm accustomed to, which is Doc's like bathtub or whatever.
I guess he goes to take a bath at
Doc's
house a lot.
I would have to assume while they're in Shavat that they bathed.
Where's your proof?
Or something like that.
Show me some proof.
When you rest at inns or whatever, I would assume.
I would assume that too. It's so funny when they do, and they do another thing later on where they eat food in this playthrough, where it's like, oh, time to eat. We better go eat real quick. And it's like, I'm assuming you guys have been eating but I guess you haven't been?
Well, at least since they got to Solaris. But again, the time passage abstract is kind of hard to follow.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult
sometimes in this game. But anyways, the important thing is she wants to log onto her father's computer to try to find out if they where and when the prisoners are supposed to be executed, so that they can actually construct a plan to save them.
Right.
So she's like, I can log on to that computer. Last time I did it, I got in a lot of trouble, but he's not here right now. So we'll try to log in there, see if we can figure something out.
Yeah.
So you go in there, and she's like, again, it's just the password. Right?
Oh, the password. Maybe it's my name.
It's got to be something related to me. It's my name backwards. Oh, well, there it is.
But I did notice a thing. Her name sounds interesting backwards.
Oh, yes. Nice catch.
Mia.
Nice catch.
Because my thought was Mia. Well, just understanding languages. Actually, there's a specific thing in Korean when being translated over to Japanese. The NG sound often becomes an L sound in the Japanese. Anyways, but I was like, miali, whatever?
That is...
Something like that?
That is an astonishing good catch on your part.
But it sounds a little bit like Miang's name. And so anyways, I just kind of thought of that. I was like, oh, whoa, what the fetch? And it kind of made me go through every character's name backwards. I was like, are there other like reverse-coded things here? Just assuming. It could totally be an accident, but I know that the word El Chaim is weird anyways. And I know they say Eliam, but once I saw it, L-H-Y-M, is that it?
E-L-H-A-Y-M.
That's Hebrew.
Yeah.
It means, what does it mean? Love? Chaim means love, something like that. Hold on, let me
look that up.
Because I actually did look this up, but now I am.
But while you're doing that, though, as we know, many of the names here were not correctly transliterated.
Yes,
so
I know.
Miang, have you looked at what Miang's name is in Japanese?
So it means life. Miang's name.
So Chaim means.
Chaim means life. El Chaim means the life. I said love, but whatever. El Chaim, Chaim is life. And that was Gene Simmons' real name is Chaim. It's actually a common name in Israel, Chaim. But it means life. Anyway, so I looked at that and I was like, that's funny because it's German, but her name is Hebrew. And that maybe gives some insight into her nature being a little different from all the other Solarians, who are like more German, I guess. Like Eric with the CH.
Hold on, there was one thing I forgot to mention here.
Hebrew, okay. What?
So before she showers and everything like that, maybe I'll go back and edit this in the right place. She mentions the rumor, because he comments when he's talking about your mother, like, you don't look like her. Or I guess she is showering when this is happening. Anyways, he's mentioning, like, was that your mother? She's pretty. But then he's like, you don't really look like her, right?
Yes. And she's like, haven't you noticed?
And that's,
my skin, my hair, and my eyes are all different.
Right.
I did not notice that because her skin was just about the same color as everyone else's.
Seems white to me.
I don't notice much about her eyes. Are they green? Are her eyes green?
I think they're blue, aren't they?
Are they blue? Or is the other
the
other Solarians don't have blue eyes?
Hold on.
Because I've noticed a blonde hair kind of thing going on, but
I think she got blue eyes.
As far as I can tell,
they a lot of them do have blonde hair, though. Yeah, I mean, both of her parents have blonde hair, right?
So.
Whatever. Anyways, her eyes are blue.
I got Miang's name too. Her eyes are blue, but what are normal? She says, haven't you noticed the difference between me and other Solarians? Now, the thing is, you don't get very many character portraits of the other Solarians.
Yeah.
They're just text boxes.
Well, I think,
but her father...
He's got
her father's got brown eyes and blonde hair. I get the blonde thing.
Here's Medina, mother. She's got very almost gray.
But gray is kind of bluish. I would just say that I wouldn't look at Eliam and think, you're so different from all the others.
Like you're a different race or something.
I would not have thought that. And her skin is no different from all the others, so I don't get where she was going there.
Agreed. However, she's supposed to be pointing out the fact that she's different. She has different features from purebred Solarians. That's what you're supposed to take from that. the fact that she's raised as a purebred, but she has character traits, hair color, things like that are not part of the genetic line of purebred Solarians.
Yeah, and that it's like, haven't you noticed that? Well, no, haven't Solaris haven't they noticed that you don't belong?
Right.
Like it's kind of interesting.
But the rumor that Dominia referenced earlier about her not being purebred, that she was actually a lamb, she says something about some rumor, right? Dominia, when she was fighting us.
Yes.
Elly seems to think that it's true. Elly seems here to confirm that she believes that it's true. Her father took in some kind of maid or house worker or something, and that was Elly's real mother. Now, admittedly, in this scene, they do not go into the kind of detail to where you would be able to make out precisely what happened.
Yes, that is true.
Not even just, is she really Medina's child or not, but even like, wait, if she's not, how could that have happened, and how would that work in the family household? And
it's kind of
weird. There's so many questions that open up that they don't even attempt to answer. So part of me is like, okay, just like anyone else, the neighbors or whatever, we're just kind of left in the dark on this, and it's left ambiguous on purpose. But when Elly goes into the computer, right, and her name backwards, stupid, absolutely would never happen for a top brass military guy to have a freaking password like that.
I know, my gosh.
But whatever, we'll throw that aside. She finds out where they're being kept, all the details they need to get their plan, but he comes back home in the middle of it. So as they're on the computer, Eric Von Houten, her father, comes back and he's like, "What are you doing? I told you not to touch that. Who is this strange person?" He calls in some security like right away to like come take care of this. She's like, no, stop, like don't do that. But in the middle of their argument, so Elly's trying to convince him to call it off, and he's like, "No, I don't trust this person. I don't know what you're doing. Like this, I told you to stay away from that. I can't let this go."
He's just gonna kill us. He pulls out
a gun. And he's got to.
She jumps in front.
She jumps in front, and so like there's this big struggle between father-daughter there. In the midst of that argument, she blurts out, "I'm not really a Solarian myself. I'm half lamb, so why don't you kill me too," or something like that.
Right.
And it shows
he punches
Medina,
her in the face.
who is there.
Yes.
And a big exclamation mark comes up on her head, as if like it's hard at first for me to decide what happened with her there, right? Because she runs away and she's all in shock.
Right.
And Eric slaps her face. How dare you say that to your mother, right? So there's just different ways you could interpret this. But if you interpret it, it is impossible for Elly's mother, Medina, not to know the answer to this. She would know whether she gave birth to Elly or not.
This is how I interpreted it.
If it was the father could be kept in the dark.
Yes.
Right?
Because
the father could not
she's an only child, right?
Without a DNA test, the father could be left in the dark. Was this really my child or not? The mother would have to know you gave birth or you didn't. There's no like way that Medina would not know the answer to this. So I would have to assume that the emotion she's feeling there is less, "Oh my gosh, that's not my daughter," and more like, "Oh, Elly doesn't view me as her mother.
Sure, yes.
She doesn't consider me her mother. That hurts my feelings." And she runs away.
I took it to be a little even different from that, which was I didn't know that Elly knew that.
Okay.
Like we didn't talk about it. Elly found out this thing that I didn't know she knew. Whatever. That's the way I took that.
So yes. Here's the thing that's confusing. Perfect Works, the guidebook that goes with this game, right? It basically says, this is not a spoiler, because it's not like pertinent to really anything. It's just kind of a background detail. Elly is Medina's daughter.
Okay.
She is, according to Perfect Works,
changes the story
Eric and Medina's daughter. She really is. So the fact that she looks different is
just
something else.
Coincidence?
Well, that is genetics. To what we're going to start learning about.
Because she's secretly the Sophia character, right? And
the antitype.
Right,
She's the antitype.
Right. And so that makes, but Okay, that makes sense. But she looks like the past antitype, whereas, well, no, because Faye looks like Lacan.
And he's the contact.
Despite Id being the one who, as we find out in this playthrough, Id is the one who was the person, not Faye so much. Faye took over Id's body rather than the other way around.
Well, hold on. We're going to get all into that too, because that could be very hard to understand.
But I feel like that might be relevant in some way here.
But anyways,
because Elly has a similar thing going on. Okay.
Elly looks different because she's the antitype, not because she's the daughter of the housemaid or whatever.
That makes sense, yeah.
But she came to assume she was, because she doesn't know anything about what the antitype is, but I look different than my parents. This makes no sense.
Sure, and then Dominia kind of gave her a seed of maybe that's true. So I think what your interpretation was is probably pretty close to the truth. Medina didn't know that Elly knew, or she's hurt, also in part that Elly does not consider her to be her real mother when she actually is. That pains her, and so she runs out. And that would suck.
Yeah.
That would maybe be the worst thing ever. That's crazy.
Yeah, and how long has my daughter not thought that I was her real mother? How long has this been going on that she's believed this or whatever, when it's not even the truth, right? So that's what's happening there. Eric gets pissed and is eventually convinced to let Faye go.
No, I'm not a fan of how that happens, because he's saying, okay, because Elly's like, no, I brought him here. This is fine. This is my idea.
Yeah.
But Eric is like, well, I don't care what you say. I'm going to kill him because what you're doing, you shouldn't be doing. And let's blame it on him and just get on with our lives. He's our perfect scapegoat. We don't need to complicate things. If we kill him, then we're good. And that shows some of Eric's maybe more conflicted, the way he rationalizes what he himself does or has done in the past. But Elly shows up, insults the mother. Eric slaps Elly, and then we get into a mother-father domestic abuse situation, saying he was going to kill us, yet we now step over and say, don't hit your daughter, don't do that.
Yeah.
I'll turn myself in, everything's fine, and then he changes his heart. I don't get when or where Eric changed his heart.
Changes his mind.
Other than that Elly stepped in front of the bullet for us, and then we stepped in for her.
It's maybe
and
this
he's
guy
they both like each other, and
not a bad guy necessarily.
Right. He'll take a bullet for her, and she'll take a bullet for him.
Still,
should I really
not necessarily the most convincing thing for a top brass military guy of Solaris to do.
I know. However, it makes no sense.
However,
it makes no sense.
There is an element to his character where he is sympathetic to Lamb.
Yes, absolutely.
Where he knows what Solaris is doing is wrong, and so I could kind of see okay, he doesn't have a prejudice against lambs, so it's not that. He thought he was suspicious and he was spying on him, but he knows that what Solaris is doing is super shady, and his daughter is willing to die for this person, and in return to that the guy is willing to die for her.
Yeah.
Maybe I've got this wrong.
Right. That's enough just there. It's not the words though.
Yeah.
It's the way the scene plays out. The words, not convincing in the slightest. I wouldn't say. It's to okay, you can go now. I'm willing to risk everything for you.
Yeah.
But the scenario of the scene, it makes sense more or less, given that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I will say too, it's so funny that just like Selphie in Final Fantasy VIII, Elly is the most elite Navy SEAL in the world, and she comes home with this boy, and she's like, "Oh, he's a soldier," and then they go to her bedroom, and they're chilling in her bedroom, and the mom's
taking
like,
showers
"Whatever,"
and stuff.
and "Oh, my dad hates it when I get on his computer." "Oh, Dad, I got caught using my dad's computer." Oh man. Now I think there might be something to that though, because Eric is not proud of what he does or what he has done for work, and wanting to hide that from his daughter makes sense. Right?
Yeah.
So he would be really hard on her, don't get on my computer.
Yeah.
But the fact that she's a Navy SEAL living at home, bringing boys back, and the parents, it's a funny situation to be in. But they're still teenagers. So
it is what it is. It's an anime. It's shown in anime.
And then the dad hitting the daughter, who's literally the most powerful Navy SEAL, and he's just like, "How dare you slap?"
Okay. Anyways, he lets Faye go.
Yes.
And he like shoots out the window and lets him escape. And so he's going to kind of cover for this, right? When the security gets here. But Faye is running around by himself, like trying to figure out where to go. He does not speak Solari, and if you try to talk to NPCs and stuff, he can't understand what they're saying.
It's like ampersands and asterisks.
It's like all jumbled up, and he can't understand what anyone's saying. He's like, oh, where do I go? He's running through, and then he's going back down, like towards like where that security checkpoint is that disintegrates people, and a guard stops him. He's like, hey, you, like, come with me, kind of thing. And then Citan, pops out of it.
Yes, of course.
It's like, it's me,
Hey, didn't you notice? Yeah.
So this is really interesting to me. And this is where this part of the story starts to lead up to probably my favorite part of the whole game. And from here, it just like ramps up.
This was a good
to like
this was an intense,
just the coolest fetching twist / untwist / like what's really going on here / all this dialogue to just unpack.
Yeah.
It is so awesome. This is my favorite part of Xenogears. Like, it's not close.
It was really cool.
I freaking love this.
By the very end of Disc 1, when it said insert Disc 2, I was like, that was a ride, man.
That was awesome.
That was a roller coaster, and it was pretty cool. It was like very, very
This is
very
like
cool.
what everything we've done so far has built up to, and it's just paid off so magnificently. It's so awesome. So Citan, I love this, is going to help him get through the security, right? Because Citan was a Solarian of higher rank. He was in the military. They go across, and Faye, this is speaking to some of his more intelligent side, his observant side, right? The fact that he's not stupid. He's like, wait a minute, Doc. How on earth did you do that? You haven't been in the military of Solaris forever. And he really struggles to explain it.
For the first time, like
he
ever.
did not have an answer to this, and he was caught.
Yeah.
And he did not know what to say.
Yeah.
And it's the first time maybe the second time, but the first time in a really serious situation like this, where he didn't have the ability to deceive the way that he had been doing before.
Which is so funny, because it's like the machine reads your literal DNA and your genetics. Like you are a thing or you aren't a thing.
Yeah.
Like you can't just weasel around that. Like, oh, maybe it had a defect.
You have to either be first-class citizen or a member of the military to go through that thing. And he's like, you are neither of those things currently. What's going on here? And he says, well, that is, probably they have not deleted my ID from the days that I was in the military, and it's still stored in the databank.
What, 20 years ago?
My house Solaris monitors are sloppy. And he tries to laugh it off, and it's like, okay.
Right.
I was really suspicious of you before. Now I know something's going on.
Clearly.
I know something's going on now. Oh, crap. What's going to happen, right? This is when I was first playing it, I was like, oh, Citan's going to betray us, dude. What's going to happen? No. What's he going to do?
I know, me too. It's like, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, and how bad is it going to be?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, fetch, this is going to be it. This is going to be the drop the floor from underneath the audience moment. And I was just like really kind of terrified at this point. So, okay, as they're making their way down into like he's going to take them some other like roundabout way to get where they want to go. Citan's going to lead at this point. But Elly comes back. She comes running back, and she is going to join up with you.
Once we're like going underground kind of thing, yeah.
And I don't know if you had any notes in between that, but she runs in, and she basically explains how her parents let her go, her father in particular. When the police showed up, he covered for her because they came for her. They're like, we want Elly. And he's like, you're not taking my daughter. So he basically sacrifices his position, his rank, all of that to try to save her and let her get away. Before that, though, there's a really good scene where Medina comes in and talks to Elly while she's crying in a room and says, like, look, you are my daughter no matter what. Right. And like, I believe that you should follow your heart And and so both of the parents end up supporting her in going with Faye and doing essentially fighting against Solaris. They're in full support of this. And the mother comes around first. And I really love that dialogue between Medina and Elly. Just Medina as a character, especially with what comes later in the hostage situation.
Yes.
Like the way that she approaches that.
That was very good.
She's a really great mother character. I really like the way that she was written, the way that all of this stuff was executed with her.
Yep.
But really nice little touching scene between them. Lets her go. Father, is going to hold the police there while she escapes, but she ends up coming back down. And this is another thing I really liked, is after Elly describes all of this about what happened, and she's clearly worried about her parents, and her head's kind of hanging low. Faye puts his hand on her shoulder and says, "Let's go back and help them." It's like his first thing is like let's go back and help your parents. Like he's offering to abandon what they're doing now and go risk their lives to go save her parents. Yeah, the empathy coming from him I thought was really well done here.
Yeah.
Like the bond that Elly and Faye have developed has been this like slow build up from the time when they met, when she was holding a gun to him and he's shouting like, "Okay, just kill me," and like it's really developed into something quite touching. I really like it.
And you can kind of graph it out how they feel, and it's kind of funny because the last time that Faye had seen her was when he was leaving, and he once again turned around. The last thing he said to her was, "And you should really leave the military."
Yeah.
This time, like, seriously, what are you doing? Get out of the military.
Yeah.
And then we leave, and it's so funny because that just harkens back to the 4 previous times that we told her those exact words, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like our relationship with Elly keeps going, it progresses, but it keeps going back to that point. That is the fundamental problem of the difference between the two of them. That, like, she will go with him, like, 99% of the way, but he's like, it's got to be 100%. You have to literally leave everything. And finally, she's back with her family, and he thinks, okay, we should split because she still belongs here, right? And so it's like they went from, 100 back to 0, back to the starting point,
Mm-hmm.
And I find it to be very realistic because they never actually dealt with that core problem,
Yeah, and I love how they've each like just helped each other so much throughout it. Like she really needed him to like look at what you're doing. Like this is not you. You cannot possibly support this. He had to like really like shake her out of this like idea that the only way for me to belong is to stay with Solaris, to be loyal to my country or whatever. Right. Even though this is pushing me away from my type 2 personality into the negative type 8. It's not who I am. I'm not happy. I'm not being myself. This is like damaging to my psychology to do this. This is wrong morally to do this, but I'm just turning away from that. She needed him. Right, he had to come down and like take her out of that mindset, and at the same time, he's going through all of his psychological brokenness and feeling incomplete and all this stuff. And she's been integral to like keeping him, moving forward and like giving him hope. And
as we find out with Id, one of the reasons Id doesn't just come out all the freaking time, every second, forever, is because of Elly. It's because of Faye's connection to Elly that keeps Faye grounded and wanting to stay conscious and not, yield
to
this other guy.
Yeah. And so, like, this is all just kind of builds up to this moment where he puts his hand on her shoulder and says, like, it just felt so right. It felt so good. Like, their relationship has been knocked out of the park, I feel like.
They did a good job. And there's another fun part where Citan says something along the lines of, "Oh man, what wouldn't you give Faye for a good bath in my old tub back in Han?"
Yep.
And then
they both
don't
laugh
even respond.
about it.
They just look at each other and laugh.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. See, sometimes they'll take these intense moments and, like you just said, that it'll culminate in this moment of, an intimate, expression of like pure, selfless love, and then they'll do something comedic that usually doesn't land to kind of throw it in so the kids don't feel so awkward when they're playing the game. But This one landed like perfect.
This one was great.
It was great because they didn't try to be that funny. It was funny enough to where it was funny, but their reaction to each other of having an inside shared moment and laughing and not even saying like, Citan, oh, you silly guy. They just didn't say anything. They just had their laugh and they didn't clue Citan into their situation and they just kept going. And that was the perfect way to break the intensity of the moment, I think.
It's great.
That's when that type of comedy.
That's how you do it.
Because the game.
That's how you release
to be
tension.
Laugh out loud funny.
Yes.
It just needs to release tension. Yeah, because that's the point, and that did it perfectly.
It did a great job. Really liked that moment. But let's see. Let's go straight into the Soylent System. So they go down into a little facility, and there's some cans of food, kind of like on the ground, and Faye and Elly comment on how long it's been since they've had something to eat. They're really hungry. They need, to keep their strength.
And the first time in the game, I guess there was that one point where we were lost at sea and Faye tries to catch a fish.
Yeah.
There was a more direct moment of we have to eat food, let's eat food.
That's true, yes.
Other than that, we have not seen any moment. So just the fact that they're eating food, I caught onto this right away because she said the Soylent System. She had said this previously.
If you know what Soylent Green is.
If you know what and I was like, my note when it said that was, what did I say? Soylent System. Oh, they're going there.
Yeah.
That was my note there. So anyways, I kind of knew, but even just in general, the fact that you're watching them eat when they never eat in the whole game ever, it's a clue to pay attention because that has some significance in the story, right?
Yeah.
That's probably true of all games.
Yeah, it's like if you're aware of the references, like with anything in the game, if you're aware of Freud and you're aware that you'll understand it better. Soylent Green would be a pretty obscure reference, not only in Japan, where it would be it's extremely obscure.
Yeah.
But even in English, it wasn't like a popular movie. Middling success, especially for a star as big as Charlton Heston. It's not like one of his hits, right? Where he plays like the main character in the movie. But that particular part, Soylent Green is people, it's people, is just being carried away, right?
Listen to me, Hatcher. You gotta tell him Soylent Green is people!
Yes.
It was parodied by like Saturday Night Live.
I was gonna say, I feel like people know that reference, whether they saw the movie or not. Somehow that reference became.
It's one of those movies where it's like everybody knows the spoiler of the movie, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Soylent Green is made out of people! It's people!
Like Star Wars, Darth Vader is Luke's father. It's one of those types of things.
Sense,
it's like the thing that you know about it is the big twist of the movie. Right. So, anyways, but I don't know about how popular or well known that story would have been in Japan.
Yeah, I have no
idea. It's
idea.
probably pretty obscure, but anyways.
A lot of this would be very obscure.
I had not seen the movie, so I didn't even know what was coming up, personally. Oof. So it worked for me. But
I wouldn't even say it didn't work. It's just
you just know it's not as shocking.
You feel what's coming.
It's not as shocking if you know what Soylent Green is.
It wasn't shocking at all for me, I guess.
But they're going to eat this food, these cans of food, and they ask Citan if he wants some, and he's like, "I'm not hungry."
Yeah, he's like,
but
"No, thanks."
He allows them to eat it.
Yes.
Now, this is something that I want to make. I want to emphasize.
Well, he points out later. He's like, "You ate it.
Well,
you ate some of this."
There are a lot of people who really, really hate Citan because of this.
Really?
Why would he allow them to knowingly or unknowingly eat this and then reveal to them 10 minutes later, you just ate humans, as if they had done something horrible, but he didn't inform them? I have a reason, but I'd like to hear yours first.
So the idea is, my thinking about this was that nobody is pure. Yeah. Right, everyone has a fault, and everyone has partaken in a system that is murderous and evil, and it's almost like a teaching moment with Citan, where he's like, "You eat it, find out what it is later. It's more powerful later. Yeah. Like if you don't eat it, and then you're like, oh, these weird people, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? Right." But if you've had it, then that weird people becomes you. and you have to contend with your own inner shadow, I guess, more or less. It's a kind of that kind of experience. That would more or less be the way that I look at it.
So he actually does more or less say that later on, where he's like, I think it's right after he brings Bart and Billy up and frees Faye from the contraption thing.
Oh, right. In that room.
He says, I didn't only bring you here to remove limiters. I also wanted you to see firsthand exactly what it is that you're up against, what they're doing.
Right.
I want you to really understand how messed up Solaris is.
Right.
So there's a certain aspect of what you're saying is completely right. He didn't just want them to just tell them, hey, they eat human beings here.
Yeah, aren't they weird? Look down on them.
He wanted them to have the experience of having tasted and eaten it and then realize what it is, because that's way, way more gut-wrenching. And
I think so.
Now,
I'm surprised they didn't throw up. I probably would have just thrown up.
That being said, right, it takes a special kind of emotional detachment to be able to do that to someone you care about, to the degree to where I would agree, despite how badly you want to teach somebody something really important, that does not justify such a thing at all. It's like, I would be more pissed at Citan than I would be at Solaris if I were Faye and they had done that to me.
Yes.
Right? So that would actually diminish the power of the lesson, because it's like, how could you let me do that, knowing what it was?
It gives you a scapegoat. It gives you someone to point at and say, this is your fault.
Yes. So it's not necessarily the most efficient way to teach the lesson.
Possibly
However,
okay, I have a thought here too.
Keep in mind that part of Citan's mission here is to speak to id.
Yes. I thought of that too. He wants Faye to hate
he is here to talk to id, and the way to get id to come out is to put Faye through traumatic or highly emotional,
that's good. I like
strenuous circumstances.
That sounds
He has to bring id out. And this is part of a chain of things he does to bring id out of Faye. And when you look at it that way, it's a lot more forgivable than if it's, I just want you to know how messed up this place is. If it was just that, I would agree. Citan is like irredeemable in this.
Yeah.
But because, now for Elly, but he can't just be like, oh, Elly, you shouldn't eat that. Let Faye, he can't. It's like, he's just got to let him do it. They're both hungry, they're going to eat that. I can't reveal my hand yet.
Yeah.
But the whole point of this is that he has got to talk to id. He has to find out what's going on in Faye psychology. Who is really in control? Who is the base personality here? Because that's going to help him determine his mission from Emperor Cain.
Is this an enemy?
Is this someone that we need to be afraid of?
Yeah.
What do we do about him? Do we kill him, or do we let him live? Is he going to be able to help? And so that's Cain's mission to Citan. That's why he's been his guardian angel. It's why he's been traveling with him. It's why he's been watching him. It's because he's trying to determine whether the contact, who is Faye, is an enemy of specifically Cain and Citan or not. And whether he's a threat to the world.
I like that. I like that better. I went, I think, about halfway there, but you went all the way. And that connection with id, that solidifies it. I think that's pretty good. Because I was just thinking about this generally, psychologically speaking. Yeah. You are what you eat. They became partakers of the forbidden fruit, eating people.
That's true too.
They became, and Citan in that sense is the serpent, which is not Satan necessarily, right? The serpent is, especially within the Gnostic writings, the serpent did not necessarily mean Satan. That kind of came a little bit later within Christianity, but the serpent is the one who enlightens or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is actually what the word Lucifer means. But anyways, and that in partaking of that fruit, they became
they entered the world of sin.
Yes. There's an idea, I think, among who was it? Who would it be? This would probably be Alexander Solzhenitsyn in Soviet Union before he defected. He said, like, how do you, where do you put the blame for what happened in Soviet Russia? Where do you put the blame at? At whose feet do you put the blame? And he had to deal with this while he was in the gulags for like 20 years, just slaving away and being in a concentration camp, you know. And his ultimate determination, and he was a really smart guy, was, it's my fault.
Yeah.
Like, how did the Soviet Union become this bad this quickly? It's my fault. Like, what did I say when I saw this slippery slope we were going down? What did I do? Didn't say anything. I didn't speak up. And his whole thing was, if like the only rational conclusion to come to when things break is that it's your fault, because that's the only thing you can do anything about.
Yes.
Right? And so you become a partaker in this horrible system just by the fact that you are the only agent capable of changing it, and you have to accept responsibility for the situation that exists in order to step forward and change it, which nobody in the Soviet Union was willing to do except for him, and why he had to kind of leave. But anyways, that kind of idea that in offering them the food and allowing them to partake it, they became part of that system that they need to fix now, right?
Yes.
For themselves, not just for other people, but for themselves. They're part of it. Everyone's part of it. Everyone allowed this system to become how it is. It didn't just happen one day. The Solarians didn't just wake up as Nazis. The slow thing slowly happened. I know a lot of people have a lot less control than others, specifically the third class, and then the lambs have like no power here. But they do have power.
Yeah.
And as we had seen before, they had risen up and almost taken down Solaris before. They, like, everybody can help. And the way you help is to be honest and tell the truth. And it is everyone's fault. We're all in it together. Nobody gets to say, oh, but that's their problem, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, I took it more in that kind of general direction.
I think that's good. Yeah.
Your thing with id, though, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That, like, brings it all right there, right together, right perfect.
Yeah, I agree with that. So essentially what you discover as you're kind of going through this dungeon, this factory facility here, is Solaris is the one making wells.
Yeah, and you see a bunch of test tubes with really creepy stuff in it.
And there's like these little cages you find with people in them that are like in the process of transforming.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, can you let me out? Oh, and then they attack you when they
One
get
of them
out.
tells him, "Don't let me out."
Yeah.
But he's got like.
He's like, oh, he was from Kislev, and he was like, remember me in Kislev? I had that dog.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh man, like take care of my dog or whatever for me.
Don't let me
out, because I know what I'm turning into. Now, did you notice that the screen transition into battle changes here?
Well, tell me.
So the whole game,
zoom in and it becomes a bubble.
the whole game, it's a shattering effect, right? A mirror,
Yes.
it shatters. Here, it's like this,
It's a bubble.
almost liquid, wavy kind of thing. Now,
I have some thoughts.
I was trying to think about like why they would do that.
I have some thoughts just in general.
Go ahead.
First of all, the broken mirror happens when you go into a fight that Faye doesn't want to do, which is basically every single fight all the time forever.
Yeah, he was trying to avoid fighting.
When we learn with Billy's character arc, when we learn from Bishop Barron and others.
Bishop Stone.
Bishop Stone.
Yeah.
Why did I say Bishop Barron?
I don't know, but it's Stone.
Oh, there's a guy. I watched a video from someone named Bishop Barron.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Anyways, Bishop Stone, when he teaches us, no, it wasn't him. It was what's his name? It was Billy's dad. It was
Jesse.
Jesse saying, "Hey, you're actually helping these things by getting rid
Oh
of them.
yeah, by killing them.
There is no cure. They are stuck forever. They hate their lives. The only thing you can do, and this comes, there are several. Gosh, you guys should watch the anime Made in Abyss if you want to understand.
I still got to see that.
Severity of how this can it's tough to come to that point, but once you come to that point, or also there is in Full Metal Alchemist, there's a couple episodes where that crazy scientist guy kind of experiments and then makes a chimera out of a person,
right? Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing to do.
You can't save them at that point.
You can't revert them to what they were.
That's like
the only thing to do.
It's one of the darkest parts of that show.
Oh my gosh, so dark.
It's
one
crazy.
Of the things that the chimera, when it finally can say any words, the first words it says are "kill me."
Yeah,
that's all it can really say, and it's like, oh my gosh.
That's a good parallel, actually. I think that's good.
But dispatching the chimeras from life became that one dude with the X scar on his forehead from Full Metal Alchemist. It became his like mission. Like he's got other things he wants to do, but at the same time, I'm going to destroy all these abominable creations, right? But I feel like we have gained a sense of what we're doing here, and what we're doing now is a good thing. It's not an earth-shattering thing. It's and the difference between a shatter and a ripple, let's say a ripple, is that the shatter comes from something strict and rigid that can't be moved, and the only thing to do is to break it, right?
Yeah.
You break it. If you want to reform, if you want to make a new thing out of it, you can't just reform it into a new thing. You have to break it and then take the pieces and reassemble it into a new thing. With the liquid, though, liquid is moldable and it's formable, and that's typically the opposites. You got land and water. You've got solid and liquid, and the idea being that liquid is formable and moldable, and it doesn't break, right? So the liquid would represent chaos, whereas the solid would represent order. And so when your structure in your mind is too rigid and you do something you don't want to do, it breaks you. It breaks you into chaos, which is the pieces. But when you confront something that's more liquid, when your mindset is more liquid, then you can mold it into your mind without breaking it, right? That's kind of the idea, right?
That is... I really like that, and the fact that was the fact that was like on the fly, or at least seemed to be, is actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, well,
I didn't have anything nearly as deep to say about it, but it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Phase 9, Type 9 Enneagram personality fears fragmentation.
Yes. Yeah.
So the fact that the battle screen transition is a fragmentation, and the fact that he resisted fighting so hard, and that it really hurts him to fight.
Right.
Is, I mean, a perfect implementation of that symbol into battles.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Something Faye wants to avoid. It's something he hates.
He said it over and over.
And it's breaking him to do it.
Yeah.
He is coming across some sort of rigid barrier in his mind that he has to break, which is his biggest fear is breaking, in order to move forward with what Citan is the path Citan is leading him on.
What he trusts is the right thing to do.
Right? Yeah. Here, it's like that. It's that yin yang thing going on.
Yeah, it's a yin yang.
A moldable, chaotic, unnerving place where fighting is not wrong.
Right.
He doesn't have a reservation about it.
Yeah.
These wells, these chimeras, it's actually freeing them to kill them.
Right.
So in this instance, the fear of fighting is not the same as
It doesn't break him.
Yeah.
It's a different thing. And the idea with the water is that there's a prima materia idea kind of going on, where it's like the original material. Well, the prima materia wouldn't be water. It would be what water was made out of. But water represents that kind of like just the pure chaos that things can be made out of, And so he'll enter into the chaos and construct something good out of it and leave.
Yeah.
Whereas for order, you just have to break through it. You can't do it that same way. Yeah, I think that's what's going on there.
I like that a lot.
I get that from Eric Neumann's book, The Origin and History of Consciousness. So.
Well, I'm sure
you don't need to read
I'm
the book.
sure that Tetsuya Takahashi and Sorya Saga were reading that.
They guaranteed did. And Eric Neumann is spelled E-R-I-C-H. So it's not clear as to whether or not Elly's father is
a reference
after Eric Neumann or Eric
Fromm.
They're quite different.
Very different people.
I prefer Eric Neumann personally, but
Okay. Good stuff. So you go through there. Citan during this whole section just continually is a dick to you for the most part, but we know that that's with a purpose. You end up finding an Omni gear as you're going through this dungeon. It's just kind of like there below them. They turn on some lights. It's like there's a freaking Omni gear there.
Yeah, under the water.
Now, there was something that struck me about this. Elly comments on this gear looking similar to Bart's. They're basically putting together, this is an Omni gear, right?
Yeah.
But she also mentions the one that they found in Shavat that reacted to her.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Now, we had talked about whether we thought the transition they did in Shavat, where they just explained in text, or in the conversation between the Queen and the wise men, that Elly had reacted to something. They didn't show that scene. They just mentioned it in passing. Whether or not that was a signifier that they had been rushed through that portion of the game or something like that. And we're like, well, maybe it's just the style of
that one scenario
of Masato Kato, or whether it was them being rushed. The fact that here she brings it up like, oh, this thing reacted to me, this gear in Shavat. It made me lean a little more toward they probably rushed that sequence.
I think so, because how would she have known?
Yeah.
we missed something.
There's a scene that feels like it's missing, where they should have shown her approaching this gear or something, and it reacts to her, and she's like, "What on earth is going on?" And she runs away from it because a little bit later in this play session, even she talks about how she doesn't want to get in a gear and fly, and so that's why Faye and her go inside the Weltall together, the Weltall. Because she doesn't want to ride in the gear ever again.
At that one place.
She has some sort of resistance to this, and I feel like it must have something to do with what happened to her emotionally when she approached this gear in Shavat.
It feels like something's missing. Yeah.
And I believe the Queen or Wiseman or somebody in that conversation said something about how she's aware of something. Elly is aware of the entity inside of her.
Yes.
And that was and part of that was an awakening that happened when she approached this Omni gear and it reacted to her. Her mind is opening up. She's come to the age. They say there's a certain age where this awakening begins to happen. Yeah. And this is happening to her, and she's really scared about what's going on with this entity in her that she's aware of, but she doesn't understand it. And that Omni gear did something to freak her out, and they didn't show it. And I feel like they needed to as a setup to this moment. But anyways, I'm starting to lean more towards they had to rush through that, and that's why they did that transition they did back in Shavat. So that's the Omni gear that they find.
I don't know why I wrote this note before that. Did we learn something about the lambs? Oh, yes, no. Okay, we come to that room, and this is before Citan's big reveal. A couple rooms before we get to that corridor where we finally are like, dude, why do you know all this stuff? We see the room with all of our holograms in it.
Yes, that's my note.
Is that
too.
the next one? Okay. There's 9 holograms, and it's of all of us.
All the party members, yeah.
All the party members, including Chew, which I've never used in battle before.
Now, this is something that I put together a little bit later, but it would seem natural that it's only going to have the playable party members that'll be displayed there.
Sure.
But something that we tend to forget, and I think the game wanted you to forget, is that Hammer is a member of our team.
Yes.
And Hammer is not of interest at all to whoever had all of these people displayed in the holograms, which is important for Hammer's turn here in a little bit.
Interesting.
But I was like, oh man, they don't care about Hammer because Hammer's a nobody. Hammer is literally not special at all. Yeah. He's not even worth...
Even Chew.
Even Choo Choo has a hologram.
Like, just born, what is it? Ancient life form.
Yeah, like useless, like can't be used as an animus.
Yes, get rid of, dispose of.
Yeah, just dispose. Doesn't even Choo Choo got enough attention there to have a hologram, but Hammer did not.
Hammer does not.
Hammer literally doesn't matter. Is not a factor whatsoever in any of this. So unspecial that he's not even worth a hologram in this room. Even though he has been with our party since Kislev. He's been with us the whole way. He was there when we arrive at Solaris in Maria's gear, right? And they're all jumping out, and they tell Hammer, they talk to Hammer specifically. They're like, tell him about something. He's like, oh, okay. He's with us. He's there. He was captured along with the party. They showed him. They bothered to show him on the Seepson when it broke into Solaris. But we, the party, as well as everyone else of interest in Solaris, we just don't think about him like that.
Right.
Because he's just not special.
He's not special.
And this is so key to his type 3 personality type and what they fear to why he does what he does.
Yeah.
But anyways, the details that you get, like some of this data they have on the characters in the hologram.
It was crazy. And there are certain people that have, like, your lamb number.
Yes. Lamb numbers.
5,286,000, right?
Yeah.
That prompted me to write this note.
Okay.
Were all the lambs created as an experiment by Solaris? I guess this isn't more or less. This is just me postulating an idea. The fact that every lamb has a number.
Yeah.
They all are numbered, and some of them say bring in for a reattunement, or what was the wording there? Like
an adjustment.
Bring in for
an animus adjustment.
An animus adjustment, something like that. which is like, it's like these are just little lab rats, right?
Yeah.
But they're numbered.
Yes.
They're numbered, and there's a bunch, and they're lab rats. All the lambs, and it makes me wonder if the lambs are even like, well, I wouldn't use people in the sense of like they're sentient.
Sure.
But are they even humans? Or are they just created experiments that are just kind of running around, and these people have like total control over what's going on? So yeah, that's kind of fascinating stuff.
Keep that thought.
There was one difference. I don't know exactly where this would go. It probably has something to do with Sophia, maybe. But Eliam's number has a 2 next to it.
Well, she has a minister number. So it's not a lamb's number.
Oh, that's why. Okay, I was like, this is different.
There's a couple of them that don't have lamb's numbers.
Well, like Choo didn't.
Choo doesn't. Rico doesn't.
Yeah.
Billy doesn't.
Billy doesn't.
And Elly doesn't. Because he was part of the ethos, right?
That's right.
So he got a minister number because of that.
Oh, yeah.
So a couple things with this. There's part of me that understands, I think, what the intention of the lamb's numbers here is meant to hint at. And I'm going to point it out, but not at what it hints at. I'm just going to point at the discrepancy in the numbers. There's another part of me.
Some of them are way high, like hundreds of millions, and some of them are like.
Some of me is curious about if what my suspicion of what the lamb's numbers are signifying. It brings up some logical questions, logical flaws in it that I would. This is just something I'm going to like push out to the audience, and maybe some people have some interesting theories on this or something like that. As much as I hate fan theories, in this particular instance, I think this is really interesting to think about. But also, I think there's some translation errors. I think like there's a possibility that like Honeywood left off a digit on Maria's in particular.
Oh, okay.
Like all of them have well over 100 million, except Maria, who has like 54 million. And that leads me to think, based on what I think these numbers represent, that he just missed a digit in Maria's. But I don't. Maybe you have to look at the Japanese version. I don't know. But it throws a wrench in some of these ideas. Anyways, here's what it is. So Billy does not have a lamb number. He has a minister number. Okay. Elly, same way. Elly has a minister number. So they're part of the Solarian society. That they're being numbered differently. So Choo doesn't. She's a primal animal. And Rico, I really like what it says about him, right? So they have their name, their number, their ether response, so basically how magical they are or not, their ether potential.
Which was, in Faye and Elly's case, is unlimited.
Infinite, yeah.
Infinite, yeah.
And then they have, what does it stand for? It's an anima something. I just put AA, and I thought I would remember it. Animus or anima something. Anyways, alignment. Alignment. Animus alignment or anima alignment.
That one's interesting.
So they all have a number for that too. And then there's a note or a comment from like the researcher or whatever. And the comment on Rico's is created by the ethos as an experimental mixture used by the Kislev Battling Association to measure battle potential. The data has been transferred, scheduled for animus adjustment. So he was created by the ethos. Now remember that the ethos was in opposition to the Kaiser, right? The Kaiser who is Rico's father, as we learned back in Kislev, he ousted the ethos' influence from the government of Kislev. He would not allow them to have any control or any power in the government. The ethos created Rico. They experimented on him on purpose to be used to get back at the Kaiser. So all those people who were like the battling arena, like leaders and stuff like that, people running the show there, they were all doing this to Rico as payback or revenge on the Kaiser. So he lost his wife and he lost his son, and he's been all depressed about that ever since, and he keeps the room for his wife and whatever, and he just has no idea what happened to them. The ethos actually took them away. And in Rico's case, did experiments on him. Maybe it could be some kind of limiter or something, but like the Kaiser looks more or less human except for his ears, right?
Right.
He is a demi-human, but it's like subtle. Rico's is like way crazy.
worse than anyone.
And it's because of what the ethos did to him. And then they basically put him back in and were collecting battle data from him and using him, and they eventually plotted to assassinate Kaiser Sigmund, and they were going to use Rico to do that. So the ethos basically turned Rico into what he is. So that's crazy.
That's crazy.
Some other interesting things here. So let's take a look at the lambs numbers, right? So Bart's is 221.5 million. 221.5 million is his lambs number. Maria's number, it says 51 or 54 million, but I think that's supposed to be 541 million. I think that's what it's, this is my speculation on this. Because Bart is older than Maria. Maria's younger. So it would make sense to me that Bart would have a lower lamb number than her, because she was born later.
First. Yeah, I kind of looked at the numbers similar, yeah.
Right? So I guess my assumption was, are they each given a number upon birth? It's like their birth certificate almost. Like every baby, every lamb that is born gets assigned a number that is chronologically increasing. That's the only assumption I had about what that could mean. Because it's really interesting that Citan's is the highest one. Citan's is 584 million. But remember, he would have had a minister number. He just recently became a lamb.
No, okay.
Which is why his would be the highest one.
Okay, yeah.
I would think.
Sure.
All right, this is Mike here doing an addendum real quick. Kaysen and I spoke a little bit about some speculation regarding what the lambs numbers mean or what they might signify. And I'm going to cut that out of the podcast because the more I think about it, the less it makes sense to me. This was something that was kind of suggested to me in the Discord chat of my private live streams for patrons, where the lambs number might signify the age of the character or something like that, right? Almost as if a lamb's number is given like a birth certificate. So when you're born, you're given this chronological lamb's number that keeps counting up and up and up and up. But the more I look at that, the less it makes any sense to me. Maria's is 54 million, but Bart's is over 200 million. And Citan's is over 500 million. And there's some things that people have used to kind of explain those things. You know, maybe Honeywood left a number off in Maria's number, and it's meant to be more like 541 million or something like that. And maybe because Citan would have had a minister number as a member of the Solarian Society, maybe he was assigned a lamb's number when he came down to the surface or something like that. But even regardless of that, I think there are some logical flaws with this theory that the lamb's number is in some way chronological and that it counts up and that it would be a signifier of a character's age. The theory does not make sense to me upon reflection at all. So I'm cutting that part out. And if anybody wants to make comments on that in support of that theory, and in regards to what it might mean about some of the characters' ages, feel free to write that down in the comments. As of right now, I don't buy it. So I think that number must be signifying something else.
Anyways, it's interesting to look at that stuff. But yeah. Faye and Elly have infinite ether response, right? And animus alignment or anima alignment. Both of them totally infinite on those. Yeah. And it also says straight out that Elly is a possible antitype. That's the note from the researcher. Right, possible antitype, approval for the retrieval and necessary analysis granted. And then Faye is, it doesn't even say possible contact. It says he is the contact. Faye is the contact, immediate disposal desired. So they want to kill him, they want to bring her in. And this is, of course, what the person who's running this, all Krelian. That's what Krelian's after. Krelian wants Elly. He does not want Faye. Yeah. Doesn't care about Faye. Okay. As you continue deeper into the Solaris Underground, you start to see that Elly is becoming highly suspicious of Citan.
Yeah.
Highly suspicious. Because he opens some door with like a passcode or something. It's like, oh, it's locked.
We couldn't get in, and
he opens up and she's like, I think what she says, it's in parentheses, meaning she may have thought it to herself or whispered it. Like, why is the deactivation code for the door lock known?
Yeah, this is what it says, because this is a Japanese thing.
Yeah.
This is, by the way, when we talk about omitting subject, this is how most Japanese sentences read. So I wrote, what she says is the deactivation code for the door lock known? Question mark. Like, is it known? What she's really saying is, does
Citan know? How does he know that?
The number here. So this was a transliteration. That's literally what the Japanese says. It says, is the code known? Is it known? And that's how Japanese talk. Every sentence in Japanese is basically that, unless they're including the subject. So that's a transliteration of the Japanese. It's 100% correct. It just doesn't work in English. So when Japanese always omits the subject, it's more like Citan knows the code. But that's a great example of what would happen if you translated the Japanese exactly, and why it's so difficult to infer the subject.
Who it is that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But she's suspicious, like he should not have known that code. Like, we're way deep in Solaris. My father wouldn't even know this. Like,
and he's been explaining to them things like the Soylent System and how
he knows how everything works.
Project M was, which Josiah did not know, and she brings up a ton of stuff. That's like, oh yeah.
So Faye asks what the facility is for. He's like, what is this place all about? Mm-hmm. And Citan goes on to talk about how longevity experiments are being done here on behalf of the Emperor and the Gazel Ministry, who are 10,000 years old, he basically reveals here. Well, they've been around since the beginning. It's like the fact that, as we know, the Eldridge ship crashed 10,000 years ago. That's why humans are not part of the fossil record prior to 10,000 years ago, right? Which is what Balthazar was talking about way back in the beginning of the game in the cave. So humans emerged onto this planet, or fell to this planet 10,000 years ago with the Eldritch crash. And he basically explains that Cain and the Gazel Ministry have been around basically since then. And they're doing longevity experiments here to keep their lives going.
Cain lives forever, but
they died.
The ministry died, but their ideas
but they were they only died because they were attacked in that battle with Diablos 500 years ago.
Yes.
So Graf led that Diablos army against Solaris 500 years ago and killed the Gazel Ministry. Yes. And their consciousness was uploaded into that little sphere computer thing that we've been seeing this whole time. And then he explains that the memory cubes that we've been saving at and stuff like that, we actually saw a room where they were being like constructed. There's like a whole room full of memory cubes where they like are manufactured. And he basically says that those are used to obtain living data, and all of this is in pursuit of resurrecting the Gazel Ministry into new bodies.
Yeah.
So like that's what this place is for. And then Elly she's heard enough at that point. How do you know that?
Yeah.
How do you know the code? How do you know all this stuff that even like my dad doesn't know, that Jesse doesn't know, because Jesse referenced the M project, which is what you're explaining the purpose of, but he didn't know what it was.
Right.
He was like of the same rank as you as an element. How do you know this? This is messed up. I am calling you out. And you know, Faye's trying to be like, hold on, like, Doc, like, you know, like, try to explain it. And she's like, I'm not done talking. Like,
no, she has a ton of other stuff to bring up.
This is not right. You need to explain yourself. And it's, oh my gosh, it's so awesome. Citan just like adjusts his glasses, and this boom, all the lights go out. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't like monologue about like, I'm actually a puppet or an agent of the Gazel Ministry. He doesn't explain it. He just, and it just goes dark, and the Elly's gone, and he's gone, and Faye's alone.
Everything's gone.
And it's just like, wait a second, like what's happening? Holy crap, what's going on? And you're trying to like go through these dark tunnels, and you emerge in a room that is just a bunch of screens It's actually it's similar to like The Matrix Reloaded when he goes and sees the architect.
Yes.
Now that movie came out in 2003.
After
this game came out in 1998.
Yes.
But it made me wonder, since the Wachowskis are anime fans,
Japanese stuff,
right? They're way into that.
Yeah.
It made me wonder if they had played this game.
I'll tell you what, Matrix also has some Soylent Green stuff going on too. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, he comes into this room and all these TV screens come on. And he gets like put into this, bound by this little contraption that lets he's sort of like hanging, and he can't move. It's like it interrupts like the nerves or something.
Yeah, it literally makes it so your whole brain.
He's just paralyzed. He can't do anything. And so.
Do you know what I thought this was? And I still might be right. Because we enter that room, it doesn't show us get captured, right? We just
he just walks in.
Yeah, but all of a sudden we're just tied up in this thing, right?
Sure.
Does it show the process of being picked up?
I'm trying to remember.
I remember walking into the room and
let me actually pull this up. Just being inside
there, elevated, and all of a sudden we're there in this crazy room,
let's see.
And we're in the middle of it.
Okay,
we kind of pass out, and then
it does fade away. You're right. You are right, and then it comes back, and he's inside of it.
Do you know what I thought was going on?
Let's hear it.
I could still be right on this. It seemed like we awoken from a virtual reality that was not real the entire time, and we awoke to the room. We were suspended so that we could move our legs and go like this and go around and think that we're in a real world, surrounded by. No, they wouldn't be those TVs because those are like tube TVs. Like you'd see the seams and everything, but they project in front of him actual.
Like he was in a hologram the whole time,
yes,
or in a holodeck the whole time.
As if he was in a holodeck the entire time.
I didn't think you were going there. I thought you were going into he transformed into it and lost some time in between when he was on the ground and then he was in the thing.
Nope. I'm saying we wake up suspended in this thing that surrounded by screens. My immediate thought was like, oh my gosh, everything was fake. We just now woke up in the real world. And we were seeing a VR thing that whole time. Now, that doesn't seem to be the case, but it could still be the case. It could still be the case. I'm prepared for any crazy thing with this game.
It does get really wild here. But he's suspended up there, and the Gazo ministry come on and they start talking to him. And this is, by the way, where we're going to cut our first of 2 episodes here. We'll get the rest of the end of disc 1 and the second part. But I want to at least get through this part where he talks to them. Because this is basically Belly of the Whale.
Yes, this is the absolute depths, and he's trapped, he can't get out.
This is the point of the story in the hero's journey called Belly of the Whale.
The Belly of the
This is basically what this is.
The Death Star
and then
imprisoned.
From there it'll move towards like the ultimate climax of the story. So we're getting pretty close to the climax of the story after this. But I have, well, as always, the Gazo ministry is badly translated.
Oh, great. I did notice some things, but I didn't look up a lot of their stuff.
So I'm going to try my best to
because it's too much.
Cut
when
to the
talk,
point.
I'm always just like, I don't want
to. You tune it out because they're so vague. They use a lot of weird terminology, and a lot of times what they're saying isn't even accurate to what they should be saying.
I looked up one line though.
Yeah.
I looked up one line because this threw me for a freaking loop.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Citan shows up and they said he is Cain. I was like, no way! And then as about the next 20 minutes keep unfolding, I'm like,
he's definitely not Cain.
Why did it say he's Cain? And I looked it up and it says, as for Cain, ... There he was giving Citan information.
Yes.
But what it says in English is he is Cain. He got info from the Emperor.
So confusing.
I'm like, so the Emperor's not Cain. We're Cain, but why is the Emperor telling us what to do?
Yeah.
It was so freaking confusing.
So confusing.
I didn't look it up until I was about 20, 30 minutes in. And I was realizing he can't possibly be Cain.
No.
We can't have heard that because we wouldn't be following him anymore if we had heard that properly. And I did look that line up, and my gosh, Citan is not Cain. I thought this was this huge revelation, and that was that kind of ruined the scene for me a little bit, actually.
Yeah.
I read the whole thing thinking Citan's Cain.
Yeah.
And everything from there on out made no sense
until
I found out he is not Cain.
It also comes across like a pretty powerful, striking revelation. It's like,
yes.
whoa, wait a minute. And it starts to feel really cool.
Yes. Cain wears a mask, and Citan's going into his subconscious. That Cain is his alter ego. And that
like Cain is his id or something.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh.
It's like
thing I could grasp, and then it disappeared.
These are the types of things I was thinking at the time I played it first too.
Okay,
it was just so confusing. It's like he's not Cain. Is like, oh, okay. It's a little bit of.
So now I have to go back and relive the whole thing, reading it properly, and I didn't really do that.
Yep, terrible translation there. It's not that he is Cain; it's he was sent by Cain to watch Faye. That is what they're really saying, and Faye's all like, "What?" Like. He feels so betrayed, of course he would, that this father-like figure this whole time was actually sent there to watch him and lead him to this moment.
Yes.
Where they're basically gonna it's the tearing the rug out from under the character moment. It's the, everything that I was working for is actually, I walked into a trap this whole time, and the person I trusted the most was the one who led me into it. And now, we're doomed. It's that belly of the whale moment, like we're saying.
Yeah.
And it's.
I love how the Gazelle are talking to him and explaining their evil plan. And he's just like trying to talk to Citan the whole
he's
time.
like, I'm not talking to you guys.
Yeah, and they're like,
talk to me, please.
But listen, we did this plan for thousands of years. And we're just like, Citan, what's going on? We keep asking him that.
I like that.
That shows that we don't freaking care what these people are talking about. Like, we care about the relationship that we had that just shattered. Mm-hmm. And that is all we really care about. And that's from an emotional standpoint. That is Faye's whole standpoint here. Is like, emotionally, I don't really care. I don't know what to do with all this stuff. But what is wrong with you? Like, what did you do? What happened? Yeah. He won't accept it the whole time. He won't accept it until the very end.
I actually really like that. I mean, the betrayal stings so badly that it's just like tuning these guys out. Stop talking. Please talk to me, Citan. Please.
He won't do it.
Please tell me this isn't real.
From the moment the lights turned out until finally when Citan does say words, it's a long time.
Yeah.
And like you said, Citan's not the one explaining everything.
Yep.
Things are being explained, and he's just standing there. He is just standing there in the hologram room, and we're trying to talk to him. He won't talk to us. It's fascinating. It's
great. Really gut-wrenching moment.
Makes it
really,
even worse.
Really good reactions from Faye as this is going on. But what the Gazelle Ministry is talking about is important. They basically explain that they're planning to resurrect God, which we already knew, but that they're going to use the bodies of Faye's companions, which they call the Animus.
That's the Animus, yeah.
That they're going to put their consciousnesses into. Yes. And so, he basically, once they realized the Animus alignment of because remember, way back when they were going to purge Kislev, right? Mm-hmm. And Miang was talking about how, I don't think they realize how important Ramses is. I don't think they realize. There's stuff that they don't realize. And then there's a Gazelle Ministry conversation right after that where they go, the Animus potential or something of the people with Faye. Mm-hmm. They start to realize that, we can use those bodies. Mm. We should allow.
This was a plan the whole time to use those bodies.
The Gazelle Ministry realized after the attempted purge on Kislev that the people traveling with Faye have a high Animus potential.
Okay, interesting.
And that's when they decided,
don't just kill him.
Maybe we shouldn't just kill him, because they were trying to kill him. They were bent on killing him. They did not want the contact to ruin this.
Was it Cain?
Who
threw out the idea of
I can't remember, but Cain was in that scene.
Them? Yeah, because
Cain does come in and talk to them, and that's the particular conversation I'm referencing.
Okay,
But they realized in that conversation, the contact, they don't want the contact around. They want the contact killed. Yeah. But the contact is traveling with people with high Animus alignment, and we could use their bodies. So we should allow Citan, the guardian angel, to bring them to us.
To Solaris, yeah.
Yes. So that's basically what they're revealing here. But they also talk about how they're planning to resurrect God, build an ark, and go back to the stars where humans originally came from. They basically say, we're not from this world. We're from some alien place. And Faye's like, that's ridiculous. And he's like, no, up to 10,000 years ago, or past that, there's no fossil record of human beings.
Right.
This is not our home. We're not from here.
Right, we're aliens. We come from an alien world.
Yep. And so they believe that they've been ordained by God to rule the universe, not just some insignificant planet like this. Yeah. And so they say, if the time of God's arrival does not come, and this is kind of going back to what Cain and Citan were talking about earlier.
They finally tell us
the time of the gospel, right?
Yes.
If the time of God's arrival or revival does not come, we will have to follow the path of destruction, or follow the path to destruction. But having attained animus, our resurrection is near. Next is God's resurrection. So they feel like they need to be resurrected into bodies in order to resurrect God. And they're like on the cusp of that now that they have Billy and Bart and Rico and all these people, right? And then they reference Mahanan, which you touched on earlier.
Yes.
That what they are referring to as Mahanan here is just the ship, the Eldridge, right?
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's just what they are calling that ship, that the wreckage of the Eldridge, the Mahanan, which they're going to use as their ark to go back to the stars, right? Mm-hmm. And so what Faye asks in the English, again, not well translated, not very good. He says, "Aerial paradise Mahanan, the place fell to earth."
I thought he was remembering from his past in that moment, because I was like, I don't know that Faye knows this stuff.
Yeah.
But he's talking as though he knows. Like, oh, the aerial paradise Mahanan that crashed to Earth so long ago.
Yes.
Like, that must be a memory that just flashed into his mind, right? It doesn't seem like something Faye would know about.
The reason he knows about it is I think Balthazar mentioned it in his whole lore thing back in Ovid. Okay. So what he's saying here, a more accurate translated line here would be, the paradise in the heavens, Mahanan, the one said to have fallen to the earth, right? Because he had heard that story from Balthazar earlier. So it's like, you're talking about that legend of Mahanan that I've heard about from Balthazar way back? Mm-hmm. That's what you're talking about, right? So the aerial paradise, or the paradise from the heavens, Mahanan, this ship that crashed 10,000 years ago. Okay. That's what Mahanan is in this game. So the Ghazal respond to that. Paradise? Ha ha ha. That may be a proper description. Our ark in the center block. Now, they say Lord Mahanan is sealed in. That is incorrect. They are not referring to Mahanan as a lord. Yes, because it's not correct in English. I remember, okay, let me actually just pull it up here.
Who is...
Yeah, Mahanan is just like the center block of the Eldridge.
So it's a place.
Yeah, it's that huge freaking like central computer. Kind of. Yeah, it's enormous, right?
Yeah.
So
showed a shot of it.
Let's see what the people here on the translation guide say about this. Is Mahanan is the name of the center block of the Eldridge. The text here says Lord Mahanan. But they say the problem with this sentence seems to be that there's no punctuation mark between Mahanan and Kami, thus making the translator believe that Mahanan was applied to the word Kami, as is normal in English, but not so in Japanese, where the particle no, Mahanan no Kami, would be the adequate way of saying Mahanan God or Lord. So there is no in the Japanese. It's just Mahanan Kami.
Possessive.
And
Japanese doesn't really use punctuation.
Yeah.
At least not the way we do in English.
Right.
And so easy mistake to make.
He should not have said Lord Mahanan.
I will add, though, they don't always put the particle no. Sometimes they'll just say, like, something, you can say something no koto means a thing, or something koto means a thing. Like, sometimes they omit the no.
Yeah.
Like, that's just Japanese omits a lot of stuff, and sometimes the no is what's omitted. And, Honeywood, that's tough. Man.
So there is no Lord Mahanan, a person or a being.
Fair enough.
Mahanan is, as they say, the source of God's wisdom, a paradise of knowledge. That is the central core of the Eldritch, the computer system of the Eldritch ship is called Mahanan.
Okay.
It's that core of the ship. So the way that they retranslated it was paradise, that may be a fitting view of it. Our ark, the central block, Mahanan, in which God is sealed, it is the source of God's wisdom, a paradise of knowledge.
In which God is still sealed? Still?
That's what they're saying. The central block, Mahanan, in which God is sealed, it is the source of God's wisdom. So they need to get their bodies so they can go to Mahanan and revive God.
So I wonder if they have found it.
See, there are some things that's like, if it had just been translated correctly, it would be a lot easier. There's so many things you get misled on just because the translation is really erroneous.
Wait a second. No, that wouldn't make sense. This is a block. I have a thought of what that might be. I have a thought that that might be a thing in Zeboim.
In Zeboim?
Yeah.
Okay.
Am I?
No, I'm just not sure what you're referencing.
There was a place called the Mausoleum in Zeboim.
Oh, right. Right.
Gives kind of the idea of something like
I know what you're saying now. I know what you're saying now. Okay.
Continue.
Okay, so anyways, they go through that whole spiel. That's basically what they're talking about, and that is where we're going to leave off for this part of the episode. Next episode, we will go through the rest of Disc 1. There's a lot more to break down there, holy fetch. So, see you guys next week. Thank you for watching. This game's crazy. Peace out.